Okay, hi.
Chaos
We're still
reigns.
here. We're gonna just be in low-key mode. We're gonna go to a break for a second, in a second. But I wanted to say hi to all the raiders coming in from
What do they call
Nextlander. Raiders. The next. Oh right, we don't need these anymore.
Oh yeah.
The Chaos Raiders of Nextlander.
That's what Nextlander.
The Chaos Raiders.
That's what they call their fans.
The fandoms.
Not
the Chaos
Nextlanders.
Raiders. No, the Chaos Raiders. Nextlander has to go out there and make peace with the Chaos Raiders. Has to like the Nextlander.
Are you good?
Yeah, I'm working on it.
What are you working on?
You have to explain.
Getting the cameras up.
Okay, but it's just cameras. That's
But I know
fine.
what that can very easily mean. There's no
There's
audio.
It could
No,
mean-
we're good.
exactly.
We're good.
Exactly.
Why is there a donation bar on this page?
Oh, nice. It just, what's it say? Does it say money? What's it say? That's not the right number. That's not, don't give people a false number.
I don't know what that. I got rid of it.
Okay, that's not a real, that's a
No.
save point number, I believe.
Yeah,
From
yes,
a past
yes, yes.
save point.
So we just busted out the old graph.
Just pulled out an old graph
I mean,
from the,
Kato's working. He's figuring it out. Can you crop just the colored the
green,
green
yeah,
part,
yeah.
and then just slowly uncrop it arbitrarily as we go along?
as we move through it.
Yeah,
That sounds good. That sounds possible, certainly.
I believe in him.
Thank you. Yeah, same. I also do.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for joining me in my belief of Kato. We are gonna. Do you want to actually take a break, or do we just want to stay in this kind of mode where we rotate out and go to the bathroom, get some drinks, chat amongst ourselves?
Let's do that.
Let's do that. Let's
do
stay
that.
up.
You
and
want to
then
start?
I'm gonna start by muting myself. Actually, Kato, can you mute me so I don't make that static sound?
Yeah.
Which I think you didn't know about before when you went downstairs to get food. It was
I muted
Oh,
you
when I go out
already.
of range? Ah, sorry.
Am I muted?
Yeah.
Thank you. Be right back. Yup, it's a good job.
So Patrick,
Yeah, hit me.
is the spirit of E3 upon you? Has the E3 fairy visited and given you your presents?
Well, that doesn't really happen till Nintendo. Like, Nintendo's like the company that like speaks the most to me as like the games I like to play. So, and some of what I have heard will be there is like very exciting.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be like one thing in particular that people are going to really like, and I haven't seen it, but what I've heard is it should be really fun. So that's kind of where I'll get at the end of it. But I don't know, like I don't know. I mean, it's, again, like Austin said, it's weird to not go and do any of the stuff after, where it's like, oh, look at all these games.
Yeah.
All right, I booked the Square Mystery Appointment. I now know what that game is. I'm gonna go play Final Fantasy Origins and like talk to the developers. Like, frequently at E3, you do a lot of these like, the PR people are just like, usually they'll at least tell you, based on what we know about you, this would be worth your time, or this one wouldn't. Or they're like vaguely wink at like, it's a strategy game, you know, something like that. So it's weird not to have that part, but I don't know. Like, intellectual me, like, of course, should say they hate watching a bunch of commercials, but like, I do enjoy the fun of like sitting together with a bunch of people and just.
Those commercials usually show stuff that some of the things that are shown we will eventually love, and I think that's part of like what we get excited about is like the idea of, hey, there's a lot of possibility here. I do feel I'm curious your read on this. To me, it still feels like this is kind of an industry in a holding pattern, just broadly speaking.
Well, I think that's what all that 2022 stuff really feels like. Yeah. Just
Is
nobody
that a generational
knows.
changeover thing, or is that a COVID like the production?
I think
pipelines
it's column A and column B, but I think it's a lot of COVID. I think that is a lot of
Yeah.
people. Like, this industry isn't really going to be firing on full cylinders until like latter half of next year, which then makes things like 2023 will probably be just like full of.
Hey, Patrick.
Yeah.
Which box do you have?
E.
E? Okay. You're going to go down for a second. I have to
All
change
right.
the batteries on this end.
What's up?
I'm gonna be muted.
Okay.
Not. He told me I'm going to be.
Hey, we're staying up.
Yeah.
Okay. Am I back up, Kato?
Yeah, you're back up.
The World Ends With You has a new game coming out in like a number of weeks, months.
Yeah. They showed it during that thing.
Wait, did they?
In the sizzle reel at the end.
Okay.
That's where Final Fantasy 16 was also.
I didn't see it.
Yeah.
I
It was
believe you.
literally like a second of like, hey, remember that?
Remember?
June 14th is when we'll be able to play Final Fantasy Origins.
That's soon. That's this
Yes.
week. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Maybe it'll be good.
Am I back up or am I still muted?
You're still muted. 1 second.
All right.
So yeah, like, but we were just talking about like how this entire E3's kind of felt just
back up.
everything is kind of on pause.
Yes.
And it's not just that, like, yeah, there's all the 2022, 23 stuff, but it also just feels like maybe it's because everyone is now doing shorter, like, hype windows, like
Right.
shorter marketing campaigns.
Yes.
That it also feels a little bit less like, in the past, it always feels like you have a pipeline in your head that's like, a few years out, and there's a lot of different things in it.
Yeah.
And now, like, what I'm aware of, what I come out of this being aware of, is actually still pretty limited.
Yeah.
And so that's not like, maybe that's healthier for the industry, but I don't know if it's healthier for events like this.
Dude, the industry is so sick in so many ways that it's hard
Yeah.
to judge a single place of health as being
What do we mean
indicative
by
of
health?
anything.
Yeah, of
right.
course.
You know what I mean? It's like, what's that? You're not wrong, though.
And even E3 itself has now fragmented in the way the industry itself has, right? It
Yes.
is no longer a monolithic
Yes.
Nor
should it
event. Nor should it be. It's healthier that it's divided
Yes.
up amongst a Keeley and like a wholesome direct, like all the fact,
Totally.
like that
I
was
mean-
we were headed that way anyway,
Right.
and COVID just like revealed the truth of like that was just happening anyway.
Totally. I feel like we're podcasting now, even though we didn't do it right.
Yeah.
I mean,
I assume we're recording.
we are recording.
Yeah.
Everybody
Well, I'm
cut
gonna go to
this
the
and-
bathroom.
You should go to the bathroom.
You can do an intro, and I can just come back.
I'm going to say that whole thing was podcast.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's
Sure.
good, Internet? Welcome to Waypoint Radio, episode 403, I think.
3 or 4.
It is Tuesday, June 15th, 2021.
Yeah.
You're listening to our mid-E3 podcast? I guess that's the thing,
When
though.
we're
is, like,
recording, it's Sunday night.
it's Sunday night. No, it's not. It's Sunday afternoon. It feels like it's midnight to us.
Yeah, dude, it's like,
It's
like somehow, even though it is only like 3 o'clock here, it is 11 p.m. on the West Coast. I don't know how this miracle happened, but here we are.
Yeah. The vampires destroyed the sun
Yeah.
in
In Redfall.
Redfall, not Blood Rip, the game I was going to say, which isn't a real game probably.
Not yet.
What was I actually going to say? I was going to say something else, and I realized we were basically doing a podcast, and I should wait to do that.
Yeah.
What were y'all just talking about before I came back?
Yeah, I mean, it was just that idea of, we always knew this was going to be a weird E3.
Yes.
Totally.
Totally.
But the question I've been trying to pin down is how much of that is because we're in this generational changeover,
Yeah.
which is made more complicated by the shortage of hardware. And so I think, it's like people are having a
You're
hard
right.
time.
People already aren't stocked up with their PS5s or
People
whatever.
have trouble buying video cards.
Yes,
People have trouble
you're right.
buying the consoles. Like,
Well, and is that part of why one of the things we've seen I'm using the word glut, right? Does glut mean a lot or a little? Glut means a lot.
a lot.
Yeah, okay. I always get glut, and there's another word I always get confused for. A glut of indie games at this event, and I think again and again, literally every day, we've had someone message me saying, oh, you guys should watch this instead of the big AAA thing because there was a lot of cool stuff here. And I've gone back as much as I can. Last night I went back and watched not the Future Game Showcase, the Future something else.
I feel like I know what you're talking about. I've seen it on Twitter, but I don't know exactly
tweeted
what
about it
it is.
because I was like, wow, I had not seen anyone mention
Also,
this.
didn't watch anything from the Guerrilla Collective.
I went back and watched like half of that.
Okay.
There's some interesting stuff there. I'm gonna try to finish that. I'm gonna try to go back and finish, or tonight I'm gonna watch the PC Game Show. I'm gonna watch the Future Game Show, which is different than the Future thing that I was talking about moments ago.
Well,
the Future of Play Direct.
Because it's not a. So when we say
Right.
Future,
Right.
that is a company named Future
Future
Publishing.
That's it's a magazine company in
Right.
my mind. It's a
Yes.
magazine company, which
Yes.
I guess it's probably not
Probably not anymore.
as many magazines. At
They
least.
own like Games Radar. Is that right?
That sounds right.
Well, this is where it
But-
gets weird. They own PC Gamer.
But
Like, this
yeah,
is-
right.
yeah.
So, but the Guerrilla Collective stream, the Tribeca stream, the Wholesome Direct, the Future of Play Direct, and then the one that we skipped the first day, then we came back to watch parts of.
Day of the Devs.
The Day of the Devs, which has a mix of sizes and scales.
Yeah, like it feels like Annapurna is like
Yeah,
the
it's-
high end
yeah.
of that stuff, and then
it is hard to say that like a Devolver game or an Annapurna game is the same as like Soup Pot, a game that seems to be made by a few people, maybe has some PR outreach, but like not.
I do think Devolver has more of a they come in and just work with a really small team, and that team kind of like stays at the scale they are.
That's right, yes.
Whereas
Annapurna
Annapurna is a
is-
little more of like coming in, finding a team, helping them. Like they're a little more involved
Right.
in scaling the
Right.
scope of a game.
But again and again, and to some degree, I do wonder how much that reflects COVID times in the sense of a lot of those are teams that already worked from home. A lot of those are teams that already had workflows developed for not working together in a shared space. Not all of them, obviously, but I think that was a story we'd heard over the last year was like, we're just going to continue working on this thing because
Yeah, I think
it is what we
Imran
do.
over at Fanbyte wrote a feature about like, I think I'm getting this right, specifically about like why were indies more prepared for
Right.
COVID than
Right.
sort of like AAA games, and it wasn't purely a matter of these games are bigger.
Right.
It was about processes and like how you make a game
Mm-hmm.
in which smaller teams were just often working remote to begin with because of costs. Like this
Totally.
idea of like, don't rent office space. That's fucking expensive. It's like, yeah, no shit.
I also think it's probably worth saying the spectacle, when the spectacle is removed, to what degree is the emperor revealed to have no clothes? It's E3 time. We all get into planes. We fly out. We get to see each other. We're staying in somewhere else, a hotel or an Airbnb. We're getting dinner together every night. Not that we didn't also do
Yeah.
that here a little bit. Then you go to the show floor. It's big. We don't go to those events that often, but we've done it in the past. You know you're going to go play the thing, so there's a degree to which you're hyping. For me, just talking about myself, right? Because that's all I can vouch for. I'm like, okay, well, maybe that didn't look good to me right now, but I have an appointment to see it on
Well,
Tuesday.
that's what we were talking about this before we formally started the podcast.
Yeah.
Was, you know, like a lot of what happens is you'll book like mystery appointments.
Right.
And it's, you know, it's like Microsoft frequently did this, where it'd be like, they'd reach out and be like, hey,
Yeah.
we're reaching out to you specifically for this one because we think it fits like your flavor profile. Like you'll like this game. Like be confident in like booking this meeting, and then you'll watch a press conference like, oh, that's the game.
Final Fantasy
I'm gonna go,
Origins,
right, I'm gonna go
Stranger of
play
Paradise.
that later today.
Totally, and is there a degree to which I wonder, and it's hard to say, but like, knowing I'm going to go see something, do I keep my hopes up for it a little bit higher?
Sure.
And you're just kind of high on that week, the energy of that week, and here from home, like, it's easier to be a little more cool on this stuff for me.
I don't know. So it's interesting. I think I was actually coming into this. I was really open to some of that excitement. Not to say you weren't, but like I find
I might not have been.
Yeah, but I find the experience of like being at E3 kind of like there's so much like grind to it as well that like I think it kind of counterbalances where like
Sure.
you get really like you're sitting there and you got to be in a meeting room at 9:30 a.m. and you would really rather just
See.
stay in bed. So I think that all comes out in
us
the
being
wash.
reversed on that is, I think, the whole thing. Because for
Yeah.
me, this is appetizers.
Yeah.
The main event, the meal, for me is going to see devs play games, etc. And so knowing I'm not getting that meal means
I think
that
maybe
these
the meal's
appetizers.
getting stingier though too. Like that's
I mean,
kind
that's
of
true.
felt to me.
That's true.
Yeah.
for sure. But yeah, like I when we were saying this before we started this podcast, maybe some of that gets in from when we were saying goodbye to the Nextlander folks. But it's so strange to not have appointments this week.
Right.
To not be getting ready to like, okay, well, what are you doing tomorrow morning? What do you do? You know what I mean? We're doing the end of
You did
E3
make one
stuff.
appointment, and then it didn't work
And then
out.
it didn't work out. The Tales of Arise, which I'm going to still see if I can sneak back
Right,
around on, because I'm
right.
curious about that game.
I mean, two. One that hasn't happened yet.
And then what was the other one?
And then I played, I think it's Kenna. We just...
Bridge of Spirits, Forest of Spirits, Bridge of Spirits. Before you get into that, though, Rob, did you have something else to say on that last?
No,
you looked in,
I think it's just a thought that occurred to me to this point of like the aesthetics of E3. I think the other thing is, the thing we just saw, the long look at Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yes, that's how
That's
Square.
You're playing
opened.
with real live ammo there, because you're putting it out in the world what would have been a closed door presentation.
Yeah, probably.
And the closed door presentation that might come out in video form a few weeks later,
Mm-hmm.
but you'd have like press shown, and I think there'd be more room to sort of interpret and like draw charitable conclusions about it.
Yeah.
But when you're all sitting there with like,
so we're a focus test, really. It's like, how did they respond to it, and then how do we take the feedback?
well, we're
of-
watching our the chat is responding as well.
Right.
So like our chat turned on that fast,
Dude, it
like
was
way
brutal.
harder than we did.
Yes. And part of that is our jobs is to be not necessarily charitable, but open to
Yeah.
the idea that our tastes aren't the be-all, end-all. You're not just shopping for yourself. You want to make sure that for the viewer at home who is curious about the thing, you don't seem like you've turned on it instantly. So that 6 months from now, when I play it, and if I don't like it, they don't disregard my criticism of it as
Yeah.
having always turned on it. You know.
But I think what's interesting there is it really illustrated why what people saw there was basically an E3 like session, E3
Yes,
demo.
yes.
And to an extent, maybe this E3 needed more of that stuff in terms of like, okay, we're going to do longer segments with more gameplay footage, more like developers talking about what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
But it isn't the most engaging passive viewing experience, and it's very easy to fall into this, well, I'm bored, I want to see the next thing, I'm hoping that something cool is coming up. And so I think that's the other part of it is, to your point about appetizers, a lot of this E3 was, we could only show trailers, we could only show like little tastes, and the people who didn't do that, I think my suspicion is their feeling will be the results were very mixed on that. Like, was it a good idea to show as much of the game in that format, or would they have been better served by just a trailer as part of a run of trailers?
Right, so you're suggesting Guardians of the Galaxy, if it shows us the trailer and the behind the scenes and it cuts, that gives people enough of a taste that they know if they're interested or not maybe, but they don't get that picture of what combat is exactly to where they can go like, ooh, that looks a little slow.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, I could see that breaking a little bit bad.
Well, I think it leaves us with less to talk about because so few games showed us that much to really dig into. I'm like, what's this going to be? What did that look like?
Right. Even some of the stuff that we did see some of, like Halo, where they showed a bunch of multiplayer clips. It's like, that looks like Halo with a bunch of abilities or equipment, I think is what they called it in past Halo games.
The grappling hook.
It's a grappling hook.
Hear
the new shield
many
type.
demonstrations of how that changes your moment to
Totally.
moment.
But that was still a trailer and not uncut gameplay footage to
Right.
where it was like, part of our job is also in events like these to, like you said before, be a sort of translator or mediator between what's often a closed door thing or a hands-on thing and the audience. And when you do just give us, I don't have shit to say about the Guardians of the Galaxy trailer that you can't go see by watching that gameplay footage yourself.
Right.
Other than I thought it looked kind of slow, and I'm probably the worst person you can ask about whether it was a good representation of what people want from Guardians of the Galaxy. And at that point, I'll shut the fuck up. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So, anyway, you were going to say you did go hands-on with Kenna Bridge of Spirits, which is a PS5, PS4, and PS5 game?
I think it's just PS5.
Okay.
I could be wrong on
I'll
that
double
one.
check it. PS4, PS5, Windows.
Yes. It's the studio is founded by, I believe, two brothers who are worked in animation.
Okay, sure.
And then decided they wanted to try and make a game, and it's a kind of a Zelda-like game
Sure.
in which you're exploring a big world. Actually, they were like, it's a modest world. They're like, we would have a modest world to build our first game around. And it was interesting where they said, we played a lot of games, we think we understood games, and then we had to spend a lot of time hiring games people to explain to us how games work. And they said that was a fun process, but also, that was a huge part of like the early parts of making that game was just how do you bridge the gap between, well, I've played tons of video games, but what does that actually mean when you're going to build one yourself?
Yeah.
So you play like this, this cute character, Kenna, that in the sort of like there's a rot in the world that you're trying to solve, yada yada yada.
Yeah.
But like the main sort of like differentiating sort of like game mechanic is that you are there are these little kind of like these little creatures. I guess they're actually called the rot, and you're finding them throughout the world. They're almost kind of like little Pikmin, and they can do different actions. They can solve a puzzle, like, there's a statue out of place, and so they'll go and pick it up, put it
Okay,
away,
sure, yeah.
and you get a little, experience bonus. They can, in combat, they can, you get what's called karma, which builds up an action point, and then you can spend that on various actions, such as, you can have a powered-up hammer that you hit, or you can send the rot to, hold the enemy in place for a little while while you attack them. And so as the game's going
You're
along...
not using that for puzzle solving, you're just using that in combat?
Both.
Sorry, when you say you build up karma, does that mean...
That only happens in combat.
That's like a super meter.
Yeah. You're filling these
Not
action
XP.
points. Yeah, you're filling these action points as you go along, and it's really just the thing that is striking in the trailer, the thing that is striking when you play it, is that you can tell this was this was a game, envisioned by folks that have a background in working in animation. And actually, it's actually really striking when it goes to a cutscene, because the cutscenes are just like unbelievably good and have so much like attention and care and nuance in them. Not to say the rest of the game doesn't.
Sure,
but
this
it
is
feels like those two people like cracking their knuckles and going, like, let me show you how a cutscene is done, coming from the world that they're in. And yeah, it's very charming. Like it is a game that before I had a chance to play it, I was worried in sort of a Biomutant direction, not in the sense of like, are they biting too much off for like a smaller team, but more occasionally you get these games that people sort of glom onto and are like, holy shit. And No Man's Sky is the worst case scenario for something like that, in which a burden is then put on a game that maybe it didn't ask for in the first place. And I do think Biomutant got that to some degree. And I worried about that with this. Was like the response to the trailer was huge. Was like, this feels like a kind of a character action game of the like that most people don't make unless it's Nintendo putting out a new Zelda game.
Right.
Or a Ratchet and Clank are kind of like in that same universe. At least the 90 minutes I played were, I think they've done it. It's really pretty and really fun and very charming. And it's out soonish. I think it's out in August, I want to say. So
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. We've touched nothing else. Oh, that's not true. We played Unpacking.
We played Unpacking.
We played the full demo of Unpacking, which should be available sometime in the future.
June 16th, I think, when
cool.
the Steam,
There's
the festival that I will
it's
never
like this-
remember the name of, happens later this month. Steam next, but then we thought maybe that was last year.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
But there's a Steam festival happening as
Does
part
that
of this.
game have a release date yet?
It's this year.
Okay.
They definitely said that at the end of the demo that we played.
Yeah, if you missed that, we played that demo twice during our E3 VODs or our
I guess we
E3
could talk about it,
streams.
because we didn't really talk about the game while playing
that's
it.
what
We
I'm
were
saying.
role playing.
We were. And people who are listening might not have time to go back, and so
Right.
it's like
I would recommend. Like
Yeah,
we
me
should
too.
cut out those segments and put them together
We
as a
should.
video, because it was very delightful. But
Yeah.
yeah, Unpacking is it's a game where it opens in a room. There are a series of boxes. The art is like really beautiful, like 2D pixel art, but not in the. It looks like an 8-bit game. It's
Almost like a
more-
children's book, honestly.
Yeah.
Like
Yes. And you open boxes, and there are objects in them, and you can place them in the room. And like that's the basic conceit. But it also is not just a checklist game. Like it is not just here are the things, put them away for the sake of putting them away. That is kind of the broader thing that you're doing. But
I think
it's like
the
telling a
game
sto-
sort of starts from this understanding of like, every move you do, every time you're unpacking, you're kind of taking stock of your life
Yeah.
and like where you're at. And it was a really affecting game, because like you remember, you can mark your life by moves, right?
100%.
And so like,
and what you choose to take
So,
or
like,
not
and,
take.
And for instance, an easy one for us. So I don't know how much of that first level you saw, Rob.
so I missed it.
Yeah, that's
and
an
so
interesting
like,
element.
Yeah, so like that was a childhood.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
that
it
was
was
a
a
childhood
child's room.
filled with all of the things of childhood. Lots
It felt
of
like
toys.
it felt like a parent
Yeah.
putting together their kid's room,
Sure.
as opposed to the kid putting together their
Lots
room.
of stuffed animals, lots of, yes, there was a Game Boy, yes, there was a soccer ball, lots of art stuff. And so, for instance, a very easy one, when you move to the second apartment, which it seems like, this is your first solo apartment.
Yeah.
A lot of those toys were gone, but not all of them.
But not
There's
all
still
of
like
them, yeah.
one action figure. There was still 2 of the 4 or 5 stuffed animals. Still 2 of them meant something to
I
this
want to know where that
character.
green frog went.
I don't know. Lost, left behind, in an attic somewhere.
That's what I choose. Well, and that was
Totally.
that was the fun of playing those 2 levels was, well, one, watching the differing approaches of how we,
Patrick and I are very unpack a box.
Yes.
Then
Talk
you move
about
on.
the objects.
Right.
What is
Rob
the history
and
of this
Kato
object?
are much more throw it all out, just bounce from box to box.
Yeah.
So they're not throw it all out. I have a friend, my friend Janine messaged me and was like, another thing you could do is put everything out on the ground first, and like unpack a whole box. That way you know what you're working
I would
with.
actually respect that method more than what.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
No.
No. Rob said no. Well, the funny thing is you end up getting these great moments like the other thing, the kid put away toys, but leaned further into art, for instance. And
A decision I questioned.
many times.
I started pulling art stuff out and I was like, no, welcome to the real world, kid. Like, time to put away these childish things, and like slammed it up in the closet. And
Kato, I think your mic is off.
but yeah, but the very funny thing was, you do get a sense for who this person is as you're unpacking the goods, that taking stock of life thing. There's the implied trips they've been on in the past, what pursuits are represented by these
We
objects.
spent a lot of time thinking about this trip to London.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because we saw like the
little red
double-decker
double-decker
bus,
bus.
and it was like we spent like 5 minutes talking about like, okay, well, was this the mom and the kid went on a trip together, and this because did they need to get away from dad?
Did they have to get away from
or
dad?
was it just was it just
there a wedding they were going to?
Like,
There was-
actually, this is going to be a mom
Right,
like
a mom and kid thing,
like
yeah,
thing. We're like we're doing this
totally.
together. Like you and I chose to believe that
Just
one.
a nice, kind, yeah.
And maybe they want us to time away from dad, but like that's okay.
But that's okay, that happens sometimes. That's
But,
allowed.
like, the cool thing is, I wouldn't go so far as to say it's a puzzle game.
No, there
Like,
is a little bit of
but-
puzzle element, we should say, in the sense that they wouldn't let you keep the salt way at the top of the kitchen.
Right.
And
I
I
wasn't
won-
allowed
and I
to put
wonder
a
if-
knife up there.
And I wonder if some of that might change, right? Like, because it was hard to tell sometimes, basically like you put everything away, and then what happens once all the objects are out, it highlights them in, in
Right.
a red outline. And I believe there were enough times it was like, I feel like the game should account for this. This doesn't feel like an invalid choice.
Right.
And so then you're like kind of riding the tension between this isn't a game in which you're putting away according to a profile spec, right? Like, oh, this is what this person wants and prefers, you need to get it right. It was more just like, well, it feels like this should kind of fit in here and it doesn't. And I wonder if that'll change or,
Right.
I think like last night at dinner, I brought like a different version of this game later on that was like, hey, you have to put things away according to like a recommendation of how someone likes or doesn't like things would
Right.
be really neat.
Well, I
It's
think
like
it
a
was just enough friction to make it really satisfying when you found a place for things to
Sure.
go. Like, the game
Yeah.
does get that feeling of like,
Yeah.
like, put that trash can right where it should go. It could have gone other places, but they would have been less good. And so, like, it scratches that itch too of like when you do finally like lay out and optimize a room and it feels really good. Like, there's
When we
that
got those
satisfying
jeans
part of
into
it.
that drawer, the jean drawer.
No, we had to
was-
undo the jean drawer.
Didn't we even where
Yeah,
did
they
we
were.
the
we
jean
did-
show?
We didn't
She had
have
too
any.
many jeans, so we needed to put T-shirts
queen.
and socks in the drawer,
Yeah.
and then there were the hanging shirts.
Ah, that's right.
Those are the kind of high-stakes decisions you have to make in unpacking.
But it's great because there's also a degree of expressivity. Where do you
Yeah.
put your posters? What do you think, which shirt do you think is nice enough to hang up? All that stuff like really scratches a certain part of my brain in a really cool way. So
And in doing it as a stream, which probably would happen on a more passive level if you were just playing it by yourself.
Yep.
And not like communicating your desires the way that you do when you're like
Yeah,
commenting.
yeah.
But
also
it
this-
it revealed a lot about us.
Yes.
Like, and that was like the true joy of doing that was, passing the controller, getting irritated at Rob and Kato's madness as they were trying to do
Right.
that. And, like, that was like a really fun way to experience like the character arc of that.
Well, and this-
Rod's complete betrayal of trying to reject
Actually,
the art.
Before I do my thing, Kato, you had something. So what were you going to say a second ago?
Oh, I literally was just following up on what Patrick was saying about the possibility of it having had profiles.
Right.
Like a mix of that Sims thing that we played with Gita at the beginning of these streams, the Dream Home Decorator, but
Right.
with this, like a Marie Kondo type show
Yeah.
where like you have to like, you're getting instructions from a third person who's,
Totally.
that would be fun. But
I can't wait until like the full game, and you just get like Welcome to Hell mode, and you get access to junk drawers,
Oh yeah.
ooh,
inconvenient closets,
Oh yeah.
and crawl spaces. Ooh. And like,
What do you
then
do with
it-
a basement?
Oh,
Like, you could, like, look, do you really?
If you're Kato, you dump it all on the floor
Yeah.
and just shut the door.
no, there'll be shelves in there.
there will be shelves. Oh,
It'll make sense to me.
Let me buy different shelving types.
Ooh.
Or like
Yeah.
a little customization
Just a
of
little
the
bit of
actual-
customization.
Ooh.
Like, but later in the game, you're moving to a place, and like clearly, your stuff was delivered, but then you also hit Costco like right before you did the move,
Yeah.
and so it's like now you got to find your you got to place your like precious trinkets.
Yes.
But also you got to make room for the 128 ounce jugs of like canola oil that you bought, the both of them.
So this is the thing
you gotta,
Go
you
ahead.
gotta season the pan. You need the canola oil to season
the pan.
the cast iron pan.
It's true. So the thing I was going to add, just to like zoom out a little bit, go back to the meta conversation about E3 is, we could get another 20 minutes out of unpacking because we played it. Because we watched and played 45 minutes to an hour of a demo. I saw unpacking once in one stream for a few 60 seconds. I saw Hot Pot for one, or no, Soup Pot, the other
Super
one.
hot.
Super Hot, no, Soup Pot.
Super crackers.
And I saw Garden Story and a bunch of other games multiple times, indie games similarly, and I can't talk about those games. So I can point you to a trailer and be like, I thought it looked kind of cute.
Like that game Timo had a neat photo mode, but like I don't.
Right. But I haven't touched it, and so
Although ironically, I have
you
a
do
demo
for
of that we could.
Right, but like
we could
that's
play.
the again to me the thing that changes my relationship to E3 is not being like, okay, here's another one is, you know what a classic E3 developer is for me is Frogwares. You always get someone who goes to see the Frogwares game who's like, damn, that was better than I thought it was. That looked kind of cool. We saw Sinking City a couple of years ago. People go see those Sherlock games. There's another new Sherlock Holmes game this year.
And I saw this morning while I was in
Did you not
bed,
see
I
this?
watched
I
an
didn't see this.
IGN walkthrough of
So I didn't
having
watch
played
that yet.
the first quest or whatever in that game.
Tell me what that looks like. Is that still what someone told me was they're keeping some of the open world stuff from Sinking City and doing a Sherlock Holmes game in that style.
Yeah, I didn't see much of that. I saw more of the like deduction stuff and the takeaway from apologies to the commentator on the video. I don't know your name. I didn't catch that part watching it, but they were both frustrated and delighted how much the game was fine with you failing. It was like
Interesting.
you dumbass, you didn't get it.
That's
Like,
great.
And so they said they did a lot of saving and reloading to try and optimize for that, but it does seem like the game is built that because it's like young Sherlock Holmes,
Yes,
right? He's
this
just
is
getting
like-
started, so it's
yes,
supposed to be
it's an origin. It's chapter one.
And I think part of the
Okay, sorry.
and I think part of the premise is someone is following you around and like taking notes on you, not in like a
Creepy
secret
Watson.
way.
No, in fact,
not-
I'm
it's
reading
not Watson.
a different John. Before John Watson, there's a different John, no H.
John Wick.
John Wick is there, your best and only friend. But who is he really?
John Moriarty.
Moriarty. It's Moriarty.
Fucking yes.
Spoilers.
Okay, but Frogwares is the company that that one year just like admitted that the premise of their game after the opening intro of it was that like Sherlock Holmes is dead. Remember? So I'm not that. I think it's gonna be fine if we're right
is
about
it,
it
the
being
Testament
Moriarty.
of Sherlock Holmes?
Testament of
Yeah.
Sherlock Holmes. Yeah. But yeah, like those are games that one of us would have gone to see.
Yep.
And then been like, ooh, exciting. And now the thing that we can say is like, IGN did a video.
Yeah, that I can tell you a couple of details that I picked up on at 8:15 in the morning.
Right, exactly. Previous stuff, and again, the other thing that's weird is we're recording this on Sunday, late afternoon.
Yep.
The PC Game and Future Game Show are still tonight. Tomorrow is Capcom. For people asking in the chat, I have no expectation for Dragon's Dogma to be there.
No.
I have enough. Someone would have let me know that I should pay
To
attention.
get hyped.
To get hyped. To be like, ooh, there might be something you like. I feel like I would have. And if not, then that was a secret even
It's a
from
little.
them.
Resident Evil Village just came out.
Yes.
It's a little too soon for Square to. It'll be summer of Ace Attorney, and then my guess is we hear of Dragon's Dogma before the year is out.
Maybe. I'm keeping my expectations very low.
Okay.
I am. I'm being as
I mean, it hasn't been that long since DMC5.
right.
I'm sure that game was in pre-production, so they could move straight to it. You
Sure.
know, when
Sure. If that's what happened, maybe that didn't even happen. This is the thing. It's like I've wrapped back around to letting myself doubt, so that
you want to feel it again.
I do.
So now you're consciously lowering your own expectations because you can't accept that it's of course probably in development, will be announced in the next
it
12
seems
months.
inevitable in the sense that game has started.
They made an anime.
They made an anime, but the anime was bad.
Okay.
It was like dog shit.
I mean, but Netflix does a shotgun approach. They
do.
They make
100%.
a ton of things.
100%. Anyway.
Anyone watch that Castlevania? I
Yeah.
heard that's okay.
It's
Yeah.
okay.
People seem
It's
to like it.
okay.
Yeah.
It has its
People
moments.
really like it.
People really like. I'm not. Listen.
And they shot the writer out of the cannon, so
That is true. The
yeah.
Warren Ellis is no longer attached to it, right? So
Yeah.
when they're spinning it off and doing a whole new thing, that's
This is
good.
unrelated. I know that the Way of the House Husband manga was really popular. Is
Yeah.
that Netflix series?
I
any
like that
good?
Netflix series.
Okay.
People don't like. Okay, so There is.
Is it actually people saw the trailer and they're like they're just shooting still frames?
So
and
that
they're
is.
narrating
So you have to understand, they're not shooting still frames. It was a web-only show. It was a web-only short form.
okay.
It's like
Okay.
Waka Kozake. It's like a short,
Okay.
like 3-minute, web series that then they stitched together into full episodes. I liked it quite a bit. I know a lot of people swear by the live action. I think you should go ahead and watch the one that's on Netflix. Way of the House Husband
there's
is
a live action?
is a manga and anime and live action show about a Yakuza
It's
guy
everything.
who fell in love and retired from the Yakuza to just be a house husband.
But can you do that?
He did it. He's like, because he's like a Kiryu-like figure.
That's not the tension that.
No, not from the stuff I've seen.
The
where-
tension is that he's a fish out of water. He's Yakuza
Right.
all the way down, right? But like,
and he
Yeah.
projects that.
yeah.
But he's also very good at being a house. He's like a great cook. He's
Yes.
like really good at tailoring clothes. He has those skills, and he wants to get more of them. It's good. You should watch it.
Okay.
You would like it. Other E3 stuff. It's weird because we are coming off of now having talked about like the Xbox stuff,
Right.
but
Well, okay, so here's another thing that I would notice is like certain genres just don't exist in this iteration of E3. Like when I'm thinking about like
Sports.
strategy, sports, yeah, both these
Wow.
things just completely absent.
there was not a single athlete on a stage.
Yeah.
Strategy
And, like-
also, right?
Obviously, EA have their thing coming later this year. I don't know where Sega's going to
And
pop up
2K
with
didn't
their.
do anything.
2K has a thing. Just,
Do they?
I think they have a thing tomorrow. I'm
10,
gonna look at
15
this.
a.m.
Like a specific. What is it?
Pacific.
What's it described as?
Take Two
2K.
interactive panel.
What is it?
It's called a panel.
Take Two interactive panel at 10:15 a.m.
That doesn't sound like Marvel.
Man.
I think Marvel XCOM is getting announced later this year. Then that doesn't
Or
sound like where you would drop
maybe,
that.
maybe just
maybe.
lying in wait. It's like here's a boring panel, and then
GTA.
Is that Wolverine?
That'll be. Let's see. I'm trying to get an exact time for you. That's UK time. That's.
I guess it's possible they could just announce that tomorrow, but it seems like that game is of a scale they would have wanted to. I guess it would have
Tomorrow
been
is
Xbox.
still
You can
E3
clear away.
according to
Right,
E3.
it is.
oh,
Right?
if you're offering more water, I will happily take some.
Water.
I'm good. This says Take-Two will not reveal Grand Theft Auto 6,
Yeah, no shit.
BioShock 4,
No
or
shit.
any other game at its E3.
Yeah, those games are too big.
Wow.
To not.
Salting the earth. We're throwing a panel, and nothing will be there.
According
again,
to Keeley, Take-Two will be talking about diversity and inclusivity in games. Take-Two will not announce any video games, so don't expect the aforementioned games or any new game from 2K.
Yeah. Well, that's fine.
We'll see what they have to say.
I mean, all those games are coming.
That is true.
I'm excited to see what I am very excited to see what what that BioShock game is. It's gone through multiple iterations over the years.
Who's on it? Is
Looks like where Sean Elliott went.
right? Sean Elliott went there from Arcane.
Right.
In fact.
Having worked on Infinite,
Right.
then went to Arcane to keep working on immersive sims, and
Uh-huh.
then jumped on the new.
Is
BioShock
Levine
team.
on it?
No.
Okay.
So that's what I mean. Like, what does it mean to make a BioShock game?
Host Ken Levine.
To call it BioShock,
Yeah.
because it will be called BioShock,
Right.
and I'm sure it still keeps the tenet of a zany a really outlandish kind of location. But then, what does that mean beyond that? I don't know. I'm still very curious. I would love to play another one of those.
It's a cool canvas. I'm really curious what other people paint on it.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sports weren't there, but cars were.
Cars were. Which surprised me because, one, we are expecting the next Forza Motorsport imminently. We expect to hear about that. Also, my understanding was Forza Horizon 4 is still doing quite well. That is a very successful live game. So I was actually a little surprised that they busted out Forza Horizon 5 Mexican Volcano Edition, and it seemed actually kind of early to be pushing the successor of a really successful game. And yeah, I don't know. I think.
But how much of that is the thing that I was thinking when I saw that? Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
But to answer that little thought, Forza Horizon. Every time there's a new console cycle, the car games come out, and everyone goes, "Look at that fucking car. That looks like a car." And it does look like a car.
We've been saying it for 20
We've
years.
been
and they
saying it
look
for
more
20
car-like.
years. Now we could say, look at that fucking volcano.
Yes.
I wonder to what degree Horizon is a more mass market series for that sort of early console generation, early in the generation, spectacle producer, especially this compared to, no offense to the one set in the UK, but it's very pretty. This feels like it's placed so that there could be lots of different biomes on display, and they can do. I thought I saw snow in there along with volcano and desert, and
Yeah, I was actually a little surprised. I don't know what the snowpack is in the Mexican nowadays these days, but yeah. No, but it looked cool. The cars looked like a lot of fun. I mean I probably wouldn't be that interested in that game except for the fact that 4 was so good that now I'm kind of like, this franchise has earned a lot of credibility at this point. It's like, even if I'm not ready to let go of 4, I'm also ready to like kind of go wherever the series goes.
Totally. Wait, which one?
That's a Ubisoft game.
Are you thinking of what was that called? Riders Republic? Yeah. That's Ubisoft. Completely different game.
Yeah, one's Microsoft and one's Ubisoft.
The UI was so similar.
Yeah, no, that was just Ubisoft doing that style of.
Forza Horizon reskinned for that technical
Nope,
racing.
different company. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, that was Riders Republic. One of the many things we saw at Ubisoft that made me go, okay.
No Mike Cotto.
Still no Mike Ocado.
I turned it off. I turned it back. I keep it. Yeah,
We're
it's the whole
recording a
thing.
podcast,
We're recording a
guys.
podcast.
Yeah, I know.
We need your
Die.
vocals. What else was at Ubisoft? Let's stay on Ubisoft for a second and see if we can knock that out as we go through this. Because again, most of our audience is going to listen to our podcast.
Yeah, well, let's just go through a big bullet point of all
Far
that.
Cry 6 looked exactly like what you expect.
Man,
In disappointing way.
we were saying earlier today, while it showed backup briefly, that there was this terrible tension inside of it between the goofball hijinks that it wants to show and
The Just Cause-y part of
Right.
Far Cry.
Yeah.
Which I guess in some ways Just Cause undercuts what I'm about to say, because Just Cause is often also dressed up. But you know what? No, because Just Cause never has taken itself that seriously. Whereas increasingly, the way that the Far Cry series is sold to us is we have this great villain who kind of thematizes some core idea and stands in as like, I'm talking about desire, I'm talking about political will, I'm talking about faith, I'm talking about, and they want us to take that shit super seriously. I'm grateful that there wasn't a big Ubisoft private event this year where they gave us the hard sell on why this Far Cry is different.
I think you can do that again.
I bet they will. I guarantee you.
I think 5 salt. I think they scorched the earth there.
They just have to wait 3 years until it's all new journalists.
Yeah, that's. But either way, I don't
probably
think
right.
I am going to buy.
Yes.
The whole thing that they were implying, I think 3 years ago, I'm like, they're kind of engaging with this idea of what happens after a strongman is deposed. Maybe, there's a reason this sort of totalitarianism is the way it is. And now I'm like, this don't mean shit.
Right.
It's going to be a theme park with really weird, discordant, self-serious moments.
Yep. A lot of
that
monologues.
are going to be really sadistic in places too. And so it just becomes a harder pill to swallow. And again, it would probably go down a lot easier if I liked any of the gameplay in a Far Cry game at this point. I really just every iteration leaves me cold.
Well, and it's frustrating because I do believe you can make a game about revolution that tries to address it in a different way. That doesn't, pitch it in such a cartoonish, or that doesn't move between the two
that is
tones.
contrasted with also you can shoot CDs like Hellraiser 3 Hell on Earth.
While the Macarena is playing.
Right, they're just tonally that doesn't work,
Right.
and at some point it would benefit the series to separate those two things. Put that villain in a different game.
Well, is there even I guess Assassin's Creed is what's the most serious, genuinely affecting Ubisoft property at this point? I think about
I didn't say
I think it's AC I think about AC Origins and some of the Aya and what's his name? Is it Bayek? That's not right. It's
Bayek,
Bayek?
yeah.
Okay, scenes as being wow, these are two people and they have a relationship.
And
That's
that wasn't that
interesting.
long ago.
No, totally. So I still think you're right. There are writers there who are capable. There's always been writers there that have been capable. As we've learned after year, there are people in like the editorial team who often come into the Ubisoft projects to address them and change things. And we've heard writers again and again kind of, that's been part of the conversation around allegations of misuse of power, not only in the kind of Me Too sexual harassment, sexual assault category, but also in the bosses come in to tinker where they shouldn't, people lose autonomy on projects. I know that huge company is filled with very talented people who are trying to make really good projects and have again and again come across things that have frustrated those efforts. I know this going back to Far Cry 4. I knew a writer on that project who was like, yeah, the bosses keep coming in and tell us to add more rape jokes. And it's like, dude, you're fucking killing me. Like, I know there are people there trying to make something good, or at least there was in that era. And I think if you go back and play Far Cry 4, you can even see certain flashes of that. That was probably the last time that I felt like, okay, this could turn a corner back.
Well, I think the other thing there is Ubisoft, to a degree, like their method of constructing games almost has to justify the pipeline they built.
Right.
And so I think one of the real frustrations of watching these things is it's not just that these things are sort of composited together from the work of various teams. I think it's also that you have so many people who have these limited windows in which they can sort of put some kind of personal stamp on a game, but it means that you have these different experiences all sort of not speaking to each other and not sort of knitting together into a cohesive whole. And so I think it even makes things like, Origins was the last one I think that really felt really cohesive to me in some ways, and so much of that is basically Bayek, and like, just that the entire structure of that game is like about the warmth of Bayek, sort of, taking action in this world.
But in some way, like that working explains what they are chasing with so many of their games. Is like when you nail that part, it unlocks so much more of the world.
Origins feels small compared to even like Odyssey, and then like I think like by the time you hit Valhalla, it does feel like Ivor is a comic book character that is popping into different runs. And that's like that I think causes a real problem where the game is both too long and also you almost have to edit it yourself and be like, no, I'm going to stay on this critical path for the moment.
Right.
Because if I deviate, I'm going to get spun off into stuff I might not be just interested in right now. I suppose it's a little bit like the Judgment problem or the Yakuza problem, but
big games.
This is bigger.
I saw. We should plug it up.
Yeah.
What's up?
Can you gonna go set it up?
I'm gonna figure that out.
What do we got?
Yeah, the Origins demo just went up.
The Chaos demo just went up.
Chaos.
There are some stuff at Ubisoft that I actually really did like the look of.
Control.
Mario plus Rabbids, Spark of Hope. I really like that first one. I'm excited for the second one.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite games for the Switch. One of my favorite games, like the last 5 years.
Right.
And I just,
I wish I could tell you what was more distinct about it. And I'm sure there's an article out there that I could see.
Like the look and what we've seen so far looks very much kind of more of the same, which I would be fine with. But it's also been a long time since that game came out that I kind of wish that was almost a quintessential. Hey, I know we watched the trailer and it kind of just looked like kind of samey, but then I went and I played with this mechanic and like, is it going to totally change the way you kind of approach an encounter? And that would be kind of an E3 dynamic that like doesn't exist here, and you just have to wait until they show like a 15-minute game. Maybe they'll be at the Direct, right? Like,
that's my guess. My guess is we'll see.
You actually see like a combat scenario.
That'd be
play
great.
out.
Another thing that looked good. It looked interesting. I won't go so far as good yet, even though we saw a lot of gameplay, is Rainbow Six Extraction. I think I like it in my head a lot because what I've played of Siege, and we could talk about Siege as a political text that's drawing on particular modes of adopted visceral wall smashing combat, what the history of that is, where that is deployed, etc. But the hero design has always seemed very good. I'm not saying we shouldn't have that conversation, to be clear. I'm saying one of the things that's interesting to me about Extraction is, does that give me access to certain types of play without the kind of abrasion that I sometimes feel around that sort of hyper mil-simmy
I think if
stuff.
they don't fuck it up, it does.
Totally,
But
you're right. We'll see if it will.
Like the minute it's
You're
like, oh, this must have escaped some kind of lab.
You're right.
We're back in.
You're 100%
oh,
right.
you're just like winking at like shitty parts of this like fandom that's been cultivated around the Tom Clancy.
Exactly.
And by the way, that's not a video game fandom. Like
No,
the
no,
Tom
no.
Clancy verse has always had this tendency of like sometimes you just want to read a fucking spy yarn, and then you're like, boy, this is weird. There's some weird shit in here. But if they carry it off, I do think you remember Irrational they were going to do like SWAT 4, but you're fighting monsters.
I didn't remember that, but I believe you.
It was canceled, but like it was going to be like a tactical procedural thing
Right.
where it's like it's all very Rainbow Six style, but you're fighting zombies.
And that's what Extraction is. It's goo zombies instead of.
And I think that sounds
flesh
cool.
zombies.
That sounds neat.
Yeah, and I think that their hero design has always been very good. Sorry, their operator design has always been very good. They're really cool, distinct abilities.
It's a different team, though, right? It's not the
Oh, is
Siege
it?
team moving
Okay.
to this, like, because Siege
Vinny
is ongoing.
made it sound like
Although I guess
Siege
it's possible
had
that
done-
like Siege just becomes like a
Right.
live team is established, and you're
Right.
going to continue this going forward while the Siege team moves on to prototyping a
Right.
new thing, which I guess is possible.
Vinny made it sound like that. A lot of what we saw seemed like it grew out of a mode in Siege that was an occasional seasonal type thing.
Gotcha. That's a really
That he
interesting
liked.
like genesis of a
Yeah,
game,
yeah.
like especially at a large scale studio,
Yes.
like where they prototype in the live game.
Totally.
And then that becomes its own spin-off project.
Well, and the implication of like characters can go down and they have to be rescued, and it sounds like if the rescue goes bad, you have some permadeath stuff being tossed in there as
Right.
well. So like this notion of some of the beats we love in XCOM existing in this game could be really cool. That sounds fun. And also it has that dynamic of like one of the reasons BioShock 2 I think kind of stood out was it had a good rhythm of sometimes it's like you're running through the corridors and shooting shit up,
Yeah.
but then you have to defend and plan a defense against like the little sisters, like the big sister attack. It also seemed like that was a dynamic in that game where like once you hit the objective, the game flips and you're doing the Rainbow Six Siege defense mode now, and that was cool.
Yeah. Riders Republic, we gestured at bikes and wingsuits and snowboards.
looks cool.
I want to play that.
Too dangerous for Papa Patrick though.
Does the bike stuff really
look scary.
spooked me? And
Up
that's
on
not like
those
it's not even like
ridges.
an extension of like breaking my collarbone. Like I still ride bikes. Like I got back on that bike, but that just like downhill. Like there was something about the sensation of like of that first person bit
Yeah.
that just like really got
I think
under
part of
my
it looked
skin.
really good.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. I think the part where they're riding the bike down the spine of a
Yes.
rocky pass connecting
That,
two ridges.
that's like the de facto shot.
Yeah, and I've been in places like that. It's
Yeah.
scary as hell on hands and knees,
Yeah.
like
And
going
you,
across it.
You see that GoPro footage from people doing that sort of bullshit, which is terrifying. But like,
Yeah.
it was totally going for that aesthetic that
Totally.
you see on those videos.
Totally. Yeah, Descender. I've played Descenders. Descenders is really cool. Absolutely. Someone says, "Is Patrick about to play something?"
We're gonna keep recording the podcast. So I'm trying to download the Final Fantasy Origins. Download
Exactly.
that people said went out.
Anything else that y'all want to talk about from either? I guess not Ubisoft. I think we've covered all the biggest stuff there. But before we go over the Microsoft stuff, is there anything else from previous to that? Was Battlefield? Where was Battlefield at? Was Battlefield at
Battlefield
Xbox
wasn't
today?
like we had the thing in the that's part of Microsoft, I guess.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Right.
we had Gearbox.
I guess we talked about. Oh my God.
Do we need?
What's
I don't think
no? We don't need to talk
that.
about Gearbox. How about that? We don't need to. Is that true? Is there anything at Gearbox that I was like, okay, well this?
Oh
will
yeah,
work?
wait, hold on. They refused to show any Homeworld 3.
Well, yes.
Homeworld 3 not pictured.
Oh, what was that? Eighth?
Eighth.
Not Aether.
I'll keep looking at this huge list of things.
It was the
Salt and
aliens
Sacrifice, new Salt and Sanctuary game, sure. Solar Ash, the next team from the Hyperlight Drifter team. That looked kind of sick. This is not a Gearbox,
Yeah.
to be clear. Jumping around, riding on things, skating around. 2 Point Campus looked fine. Like, but again,
Yeah.
this is the thing
Oh,
about
yeah.
this is, okay, yeah, this, check, check, check.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a particularly interesting conversation.
Do you have the PlayStation app?
Yes.
Because I don't think it's coming on the store, so I'm going to send you a link.
Okay.
and then you can.
We're gonna work around this.
Wait, I think that's my PlayStation.
Is yours?
Yeah.
Do you have the PlayStation now?
I saw. I hit it at the same time that someone in the chat said it. You know what we haven't talked about yet, Patrick?
Hit me.
Elden Ring.
Oh, this. I mean,
That's because
we talked about it. We just
Yeah.
haven't talked. Yeah, in
Yeah.
this format.
Yes.
Yeah, I haven't spent the time. Neither of us have spent the time, which is what I'll end up doing either tonight or tomorrow.
Yeah.
Of like reading the 100-page forum thread of like
Yes.
all the little people picking apart the trailer for the bits that I didn't read. Like, send me,
Yeah.
let me queue up the YouTube videos. I don't watch hour-long analysis videos of anything.
Yeah, but
I will do it.
I'm gonna do it
for
for this. I'm gonna do it for this.
I will say I'm excited. I've seen some sort of, which is not, I don't think, an unexpected reaction of, Dark Souls 4. Okay, well, why didn't they just, why finish Dark Souls and then make another one of those? And I think they've communicated from the beginning when they said we're going to make a dark fantasy action
Yeah,
RPG.
me too.
Like
This is
that's
exactly
going to
what I
be
expected it to
Dark
be.
Souls, but they
Yeah.
didn't want to have to continue that canon. They finished
Yes.
out that story.
Which I like. I guess if a lot of people are like you, who are like they're not super tuned into
Right.
lore and stuff, but I think even you understand that there is a certain restriction inside of a set of visual iconography.
And also they wanted a finality
rules
to the
yeah.
narrative, and like this
Yes.
was the story of Souls.
Yes.
And yeah, anyway, I'm fucking hyped.
Totally.
I mean, I will, not even necessarily disappointment, it's more that I'm excited to see more.
I'm excited
of-
it's so soon.
Yeah, it's a little sooner than I expected, but more in the, when we talk about when Bloodborne came out and how it subverted your expectations, both in terms of what the player brings to it and how the game subverts
Yes.
how you can interact with it. What?
You want to know the one word that isn't in this thing? Oh wait, yes it is. It's further down.
Chaos.
Never mind. It starts with like a bunch of other words before you get to origin. So
Okay.
A Bloodborne, where like they take away your shield and
Yeah.
they don't want you to
Right.
turtle. They want you to be
Right.
aggressive. Sekiro, where it's, hey, you know how there's pairing in all these games, but you don't really need to do it. Well, it turns out
You really gotta
you
do
really
it.
got to do it.
Yeah. And now we got horses. We got
Right.
what looks like open world stuff.
Right, and I just don't know what all those things mean
Right,
quite yet.
right.
They are like broad terms. My brain can be tickled by the possibilities.
Right.
There's stealth.
There's it looks like a lot of abilities maybe in a way that
Well, there was in that PDF. It was like you'll find skills.
Skills.
What does that mean?
Right, but
like, is
what it
that
mean-
capital S skills? Like a
totally. This game could come out and all of us could go
Well,
like, oh
like-
yeah, there's poise, there's everything else, boom, 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 boom. This is basically the same thing. Or it could come out and basically this is just a Dark Souls, but the maps are wider.
Right.
But it could come out and be substantially different in the same way that Sekiro was, where like, hey, the way we use consumables is meaningfully different in a way from the way I played Dark Souls.
that's what I was gonna say. It was just like the idea of skills immediately remind me of the things you would unlock in Sekiro
Totally.
specifically. So, and some of the movement also feels that way. The like rolls and stuff feel a little more agile than
Yeah.
even like a fast roll in
Totally.
Dark Souls.
I would be excited if a lot of what you customize when you play a Souls game, you're still working with sort of like the same basic move set, right?
Right.
And
Yes.
so what if what you're customizing in-
Dragon's Dogma 2. But it's because like the
Right.
magic archer feels
Right.
way different than the warrior.
And also, what are their movement abilities that are
100%.
different?
Are you
like,
rolling
hey,
differently?
Do
Are
you
you-
want to dash?
Right.
Like, you can
Yes.
get a dash, but that you're speccing down. Like you're making a big choice about your character
Exactly.
by giving them
not
the
just
dash.
how heavy are you, do you roll or do you kind of like fall over,
Right.
but are you does the wizard get a blink dash
Right.
lets them dodge through and
Right.
and some of that stuff was in Sekiro. There were consumables you could use to change the way you dash, or in
And-
Bloodborne also. Bloodborne
Yes.
had similar things like
Yes.
that too. Imagine a game in which they built those into the character. That would be super exciting to me.
And maybe that even won't be the case, and I'm imagining a game in my head. But like those are the details I want
Right.
to see filled out. And I will say, my Oracle Omni on Reset Era, one of the comments that they made after we've mentioned this person on
Omni.
Omni, yes. But I just mean, if for some reason you haven't listened to the past,
Yes.
they are someone on the Reset Era message boards that has proven to be a very reliable, is somehow knowledgeable of this project. Whether that's on the From or Namco side, probably something on the Namco side would be my
Yeah.
guess, given the history of these things. Said that people should be very excited about the things they don't know yet, and
That's
that is
exciting.
the way I think the phrasing was something like the most Dark Souls a Dark Souls game has ever been. I don't know what that means, but I do think
on its shit.
Yeah, exactly, and that makes me excited to see. And also, it's Dark Souls 3 in some ways felt I like that game, but did feel sort of perfunctory in the sense that to bring closure to this, there is sort of a limited vocabulary of what we can do within that without sort of
Right.
betraying what Dark Souls is. And so that's part of making another dark fantasy action game is to be freed of that. Where also people aren't, upset if you go on XYZ direction because we're building a new universe, new characters, and like I'm so excited to see those details be filled in. And also, if From chose to go back to this, like they didn't have to, right? Like Miyazaki or the team as a whole, they thought they had something to say or further to say in this specific sort of presentation and context. Like, well then what is that? Because I've trusted them this far that when they go to revisit something, it's for a good reason. And at this point, they seem like they have the license to do whatever the fuck they want. And so, why this?
Why this?
And I don't think they've answered that question yet, but it's not because I don't think they have an answer.
Or they don't have an answer. Is that 'cause-
Correct, yeah, I think they have
And maybe
an
we'll
answer.
see more at Bandai Namco's thing in
Sure,
a couple
yes,
days, right?
yes.
So again, it was weird to record one of these right in the middle like this.
I'm coming back in, so just keep an eye on the chat.
Yeah.
Death's Door looked really good. A couple other small things.
Yep.
Death's Door from the Titan Souls team.
And very soon, too, coming in mid-July. or
Mid-July, so
something
it's
like that,
very
yeah.
soon. Your little crow, you got a sword, you got some abilities, some rolls, some dodging.
It looks like a very good action game from that
Isometric perspective,
Yes, yes.
yeah, very similar. That looked cool. Loot River, very similar perspective. Not exact, not isometric, but like Loot
I
River.
can't hear it without immediately.
Yes. We're downloading, and we'll see how it goes.
I will say
Yes.
the message board threads were just showing like crashing errors and people try to load it. But we're gonna find out.
We're gonna find out ourselves live on stream
Mm-hmm.
if the Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy Origins demo is as broken as it is reported to be.
We'll see.
Moonglow Bay, that fishing game, has been a lot of places, but that was
Mm-hmm.
announced previously. Loot River, again, also kind of top-down action exploration indie game where you're moving little islands around that are shaped like in basic geometry pieces, like
Yeah.
blocks that sort of look like Tetris pieces. It's not the Tetris pieces.
Kato's gonna throw
They're
something
not
at us.
Tetranimos.
It's not a
Tetraminos? Minos or Ninos? Nemos.
Nino.
Minos.
Minos.
Tetraminos are delicious.
Tetraninos. You get yourself a good slice.
Yeah.
When you,
Square
when you
only.
eat a Tetramino, it comes out as a Tetranino.
It's a Tronino. I see.
Okay.
A Leckhead, a platformer that looked nice
Yeah,
unless
that
you were
was
Rob.
very.
In which
Okay,
case,
give Rob a break. Just because he doesn't like Mega Man. I'm going to defend Rob in this scenario.
okay, that's fair. That's fair.
You know that Mega Man is despicable. Right on, Patrick.
I don't like. The word despicable implies things that I'm not ready to
It's harsh.
unpack here. But yeah, with like all those games.
We
look
got
really
we
solid.
got some discourse here in the chat.
Oh.
People are saying I thought it was Tetronimo like domino, or tetramino like domino.
No.
Do and Mino, 2 blocks. Tetro and I don't know.
They all sound beautiful.
They do. Tetramino.
I guess we could be wrong.
Tetramino.
I don't like. No.
Tetramino.
That's the automata of.
Tetrami. No.
You trying to tetcha me? No.
No.
Is that like when a
Tetrami. Tetra you.
when a block like stops you from being able to like drop it down? Like
yes.
that's.
Yes. Exactly.
Tetramino.
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 Tetramina.
Other things throughout the day. Sable. We finally got some Sable gameplay. I played that game at a Judges Week,
I'm going to play it soon.
2017, 2018.
On. I don't know. It's somewhere in my email, but I'm going to play that soon.
I enjoyed when I played of it years ago, but it was very early. It was very
right when it had been unveiled, right?
Yes, exactly. I think that's one of those games that, like, boy, those GIFs had looked very pretty, and then they got to the part where they had to make a game and like had to build out a whole game around what was basically some very simple traversal interactions and stuff. And it turns out that's there's more there, and you got to do that stuff.
It's a Game Pass game too.
Ooh, is it? That's nice. That's exciting.
Yeah, I'll be able to I think report back on Thursday's podcast, having because it was part of the Tribeca Film Festival.
Right. I see. Scrolling. I'm scrolling through a list of games. Has anyone seen? Okay, this is a Rob and maybe Kato thing more than I don't know. Maybe it'll end up being a Patrick thing. Chernobylite. This is a game that I'm like hopefully getting code for soon, and it was somewhere. And I think it may have been in early access, but it's a Stalker adjacent thing again.
I think it's less adjacent than it appears. Like,
Really? Okay.
I don't know. The vibe I get when I look at it is horror adventure game more than like that's just the vibe I get. But it's been a while since I looked like
Okay.
hard at it.
Chernobylite?
Chernobylite. Chernobyl, ITE. Chernobylite.
I'm looking.
I think I'm curious about it. I think I just got an email about getting code soon. First-person exploration. I thought maybe it was more actiony than adventure-y, but maybe you're right that it leans in that direction. I'm curious about it. I'll be happy to see it. I'm trying to hit like a few other things that are like before we go back to Microsoft, just so we get a little bit of distance because we just saw Microsoft stuff. It's a lot of stuff that at some of these events that I'd already seen elsewhere, like Black Book, this really cool looking card game where you play a witch in I want to say Poland, but I could be wrong. When we talked about that months ago on the podcast, and that was at one of the Indie events. I want to say maybe that was in, it might be Russia. In one of the, I think Guerrilla Collective maybe had that, and that was extremely cool.
There's that horror game, Walk.
One more time?
Walk?
Walk. Oh yeah.
Walk.
That horror game that showed up in, was that Day of the Devs?
I think that was Day of the
It was Day of the Devs. That was one that had the kind of VHS, security
It was on
cameras
the
plus.
PS1
Correct.
demo, PS1 horror, those collections
That
that
looked
they do.
sick.
Yeah.
Yes.
Also, what was that other the game we saw that was the like tarot card looking thing with
Oh,
the
right. It's
ro-
like an escape the room, but you're also doing like
Yeah.
inscription?
Inscription, but crypt.
Right.
Like CRYPT.
Yeah.
That is apparently an expansion of a game, a demo you could download on itch.io.
Interesting.
Now. Someone
Okay,
tweeted
cool.
that at me at some point, so
Gonna
I'm curious
download
to go
that
check
right now.
because that looked
Nice.
really
We-
fucking cool. And then also there was like, wasn't there like some FMV at the end there or something? There was like some weird story stuff going on at the end.
There
that,
was.
Yeah.
That made me go, what is happening?
Yeah, I was very excited to check out more of that. too.
I mentioned briefly that there was, I think this was from the Future of Games Direct, not the Future, or sorry, the Future of Play Direct. I think that's where this is from.
not the Future Games
Not
show.
the Future
Were they
Game
calling
Show.
themselves a direct?
Yeah, they use the word direct. I know. Well, they're not the only
interesting.
ones. Some other people have done that.
No, I just
like
think that's,
Wholesome.
I just think that's
I'm just going to show you this. This is a game called Wolfstride, which there had been some, like some treatment of, but there hadn't been any gameplay to look at until now. It's like extremely anime mecha, black and white. I'm going to turn it down a little bit so it's not bleeding through on mics.
Yeah.
Where published by Raw Fury, you're like fixing your mech up and then getting into mech duels. Running around a town in very stylish.
The guy's got those pointy glasses.
Does have the pointy glasses. And then in the fights, it becomes kind of a card battler thing where you, or something,
wow.
or an RPG where you're targeting different parts, and all the animation is extremely fucking cool. That's called Wolfstride.
Wait,
And so
why aren't
that
we
went
showing the
from
people
like,
this?
huh?
Why aren't we showing the people?
Because it's a whole thing, Kato.
Okay.
Because it's a whole thing. They could go look it up. WOLFSTRIDE. If we could hit a button and quickly switch back.
Yeah, you just have to hit
No,
the switcher button.
nothing
See,
has
this
ever
is-
been
this is
quick
not- it's
this
just
weekend.
not.
We
You
just
just
want to
hit the
record this
switcher button.
podcast.
No,
and move
I don't
on
want to
with
get
our
up.
lives.
Reject.
We're
No.
rejecting.
I could hit the switcher
Nope.
button.
It's fine. We're moving on.
Okay.
Severed Steel, also from that Future of Play Direct. I think maybe that was from the Guerrilla Collective, but I think it was also Future of Play. And that was a really neat looking first-person shooter that had a bunch of like, wall jumping and teleporting, lots of like cool abilities, but was kind of an arcadey run-based thing. And the thing that was so fun about that trailer was it was the developer showing off cool tricks that he didn't intend that the community had found while it was in early access. So for instance, there's a wall jump in the game, and you could use that wall jump also on enemies. So you could wall jump off of someone, and then it push you up in the air, and you go into slow motion, and you get bonus points for kills if you're upside down ever. And so they were using that to get really high up in the air so that they could flip upside down and then clear a room.
Yeah, I did
Or another one really quick was like teleport a gun to the end of a long hallway, do a stealth kill on the first enemy, and then fight your way with their worst gun. And then at the end, you have a good gun at the end of that room, where normally you're supposed to be stuck with the bad guns for the impending incoming enemy sweep. And like this trick means you get there at the end of the room with the best gun the gun that you start with, instead of blowing all that rare ammo. And showing that stuff off and being like, this is the type of game it is, where you're going to find neat ways to do runs through various levels. Think of it as if like you're seeing something like super hot and someone's like, this is a cool way to get through this level. That is a neat way to do a trailer.
That is a neat way. That reminds me of when I did this piece on Celeste, where they semi-recently like canonized like rule breaks and sequence breaks, and like essentially took glitches that the community had then come up with official names for and canonized it, and then actually went back and cleaned up the code so it was like more accessible to do the thing that they were trying to do.
Yes.
So that newcomers who were trying to learn could like pull off. It wasn't making the timing easier. It was just making like, oh, actually, we're just going to recognize this as part of the game because the community found it. And I just think stuff like that is really neat. And maybe sometimes runs up against the fun of breaking the thing. But I think it's all in the spirit. Of recognizing like what a community is doing and how much they shape what a game is, especially once it's gone live. And they're defining what they find exciting about it.
Totally. So that was the one I just said was Severed Steel, and the one before that was Wolf Stride.
How do you feel about that physical only game?
They are getting an incredible amount of backlash.
Well, there's two things.
Oh, what's the other?
There's another different group announced that they're doing a whole series of games that are physical only.
And that's
like
not related to
3 days
the Devolver
previous
thing?
to that.
Okay.
Let's talk about the Devolver one while I figure out the name of the other one.
Demon Throttle is the name of that one.
What is it?
The Devolver.
Demon Throttle.
Demon Throttle.
That
the
demon
Devolver
kissed
one.
my wife.
Right, that demon kissed my wife.
And it's interesting because I really liked that trailer. That looked like a game that I would enjoy playing. And then realizing that it's only a physical product that will be on sale for a couple of months.
Right.
Especially in the context of a presentation that was like, what's really like a lot of bullshit is like all these weird like tricks that people do to try and get you to pay more money.
Right.
And it's like, well, like one of those tricks also now feels like I can only buy the physical copy of this game until it disappears into collectors' hands and I have to buy it on eBay to buy this game. Like that doesn't feel good.
Right.
It's also specifically a limited edition.
Yes.
It's using a website that has like a queue system where you get in line.
Well, that's limited run games, right? Or is it not limited
This
run
is
games?
something different, I think.
No, this is special reserve games. This is how they're selling Demon Throttle.
Special reserve games.
Special reserve.
Not
Well,
limited
so
run,
it's limited in the sense that there's a limited amount of time that you can purchase it, but they are not capping purchase
How
limits.
many?
So it's like if 20,000 people buy the game, they'll make 20,000. If
Right.
25,000 people buy the game, they'll make 25,000.
Right.
And then I saw that and I hadn't quite put that all together. I thought like, well, maybe there's a chance that this is just, we're doing physical first, and then like later, like we'll do a digital thing, and this is just kind of a way to spike initial interest. Like I could live with that. Like, but they were saying very specifically they weren't going to do that, and they're in all their tweets. They should, community manager running that thing, you should have just put out a statement that explains like you're listening and soliciting feedback. Instead, it's just dozens and dozens of responses. They're like, we hear you. We're trying this because of a very specific group of passionate, people that wanted to allow these games to exist with no other way. We're trying to take your feedback into consideration.
I think you're talking about the other company. You're talking about super rare games because the thing that they were saying on there, so they also announced, this was Friday, so before the Devolver thing, that they are now starting to release some Switch-only titles, only in physical form, and they're out on social media saying, like, well, these games wouldn't even exist without us, basically. Saying the only reason these games are getting made is because we're paying for them, and people are saying, but wait, this company, this studio now can't sell this any other way. It's one thing to do a limited release on something that's physical, but even a time-limited one, But to say that this is the only way you'll ever be able to play this thing from studios that don't necessarily have big names, that don't have a huge following, when a digital release is not adding that much overhead, in my understanding of it.
Okay. Is this really about like trying to test drive a way to change like buyer behavior, where it's like the thing that makes it hard to project how a game is going to do is like how many people are immediately going to be like, I'll wait for a sale.
Sure.
And it's, we know that full price is a much better, is a much better sale to make for the obvious reasons. And so maybe you're trying to discourage that wait for sale behavior, but I don't know that really, my view has always been that like, probably over time you still come out ahead just because word of mouth can do its thing.
It feels so much like collector driven. People are going to buy these because they're super limited. They're printing 5,000 and then are going to print more to order. This is the super rare games. I don't know if that's the same thing with Demon Throttle and Special Reserve.
But it's all kind of
different.
operating
But it's all
in
that same space.
Yes.
Super Rare has said, we are not ever doing this digitally, full stop, and have not moved on that. I've not seen any like we are listening type statements from them.
So maybe it was the other one.
So maybe or maybe Special Reserve is saying they're listening, and maybe they'll change on that. But yeah, it bugs me because there's another way to do that, Rob, which is like I'm not going to lower the sale. This game won't be on sale. We're not going to ever drop it below such and such a price.
Which is damn near the Activision model. Like
Which
they
it's
do
the
discounts
Nintendo
barely
model,
at all.
right? Totally. Those models do exist, and people do adjust to them. It's hard for me not to think. I haven't seen the super rare games, but for Demon Throttle, for instance, I'm not going to buy a physical copy of that game. I might have spent $15 for a digital copy of that game. I don't want to keep that physical copy, and I know that I could be an outlier in that regard, but I don't keep a physical library of games that I don't already care about at this point.
Well, that's the thing. I tend to purchase things digitally and then get a physical version of it when I've decided this really means something to me. I would like it to be physically represented in my life.
Right,
and so,
sure.
like, I would, in this scenario, would have loved to have played Demon Throttle, been like, this rules. I would love to buy a physical copy to put on my shelf.
Sure, yes. So we'll see. I think this is going to end up being a recurring new conversation. We'll see as more people do this. It's certainly, Devolver poked fun at NFTs during this thing and did talk about how this was less environmentally unfriendly than an NFT, or kind of gesture. They didn't say that.
Right.
But it's not like physical goods are. It's not like plastic is as clean as we wish it were because of failings in our infrastructure.
Games, electricity. I mean, like
there is no outside of it.
Different.
But it is like if we're gonna do another collector's rush, we should have that fucking conversation and put pressure on if we end up really feeling on this, like the real push on this is a collector's market versus making it possible for people to play the games that these developers worked really hard on. I'm always going to side on the side of developers get their games to be played.
But have we heard, like, are the developers themselves like
I'm curious.
raising the issue? Because
no idea.
For me, it's kind of like people are all making the decision to be like, it sure would be nice if a collector's market existed for these things. And so we're going to create one. We're going to play in those waters.
Right.
And with all of that implies. People who collect things almost sight unseen that they don't yet have an emotional connection to, but they have an emotional connection to the idea of having a collector's item.
Yep.
Whatever it may be.
Yep.
And so I do kind of feel like if you signed up for that deal, it almost feels like it's hard to decouple that from kind of the, I don't know if cynical is the right word, but you're just seeing the sort of collector behavior and being like, fuck it, that's an easy mark. Like that's an easy thing to hit.
Right. Is there any other Devolver stuff worth shouting out?
I don't think so.
Was there not a big standout thing there?
Feel like
Maybe you're right.
Yeah.
Which I guess does bring us to today. And Microsoft.
You want to like throw to a break here?
Oh, yeah,
To
for
that
sure.
part of the mid-roll?
Yeah.
Let's do a break, but not really do a break.
For this podcast.
For the
break.
podcast, I will say, we'll be right back. All right, we're back. We did it.
That was
Came
that
back.
was a refreshing break.
Breaking news from the PC Games Show.
What's up?
It's BattleTech themed.
What?
The
What?
show itself is
No, but is
sponsored
it?
by Mech Warriors Mercenaries.
Oh, that's not BattleTech.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not. I reviewed MechWarrior Mercenaries for the site. I
it's
don't like it
fine.
that much.
All right, but it's in the universe, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, okay,
They're all
but when
dressed
you
up
say
like,
BattleTech, you're gonna make
okay,
me and
I'm
Rob.
sorry. I understand the mistake.
That
It is
almost
in-
got to a, well, we have to stop the podcast.
Yeah, 100%. If you had said it's BattleTech themed,
It is in
If-
the BattleTech universe.
It
that
is in the
not name
BattleTech.
of the
You're not
universe?
wrong.
Okay.
You're not wrong.
Okay.
Like the Frankie came out in a battle mech.
Day 9 is here in like a suit on
That's
a
how he.
fucking
Yeah, because
mech.
it's a PC gaming show.
Yeah.
That's what he does.
Yeah, that's what's going on.
But unless Hairbrain's gonna come out and say,
Which we were discussing the
God.
other
Yesterday.
Like, yeah, like
God.
wonder what they're up to. Maybe
'Cause
the answer is
I would cancel the podcast forever if they let me play BattleTech again. I wouldn't do that.
No.
I would make I'd choose the podcast.
but the pod would now be a BattleTech podcast.
But it would become a BattleTech podcast.
Yeah.
Microsoft, Stalker 2,
Yeah.
which is a very funny number because there were 2 big expansions for that game, and then years
Clear Sky, wasn't that the...
Clear Sky and
Call of Pripyat.
Call of Pripyat, and now Heart of Chernobyl. Rob, I handed the mic to you.
Yeah. It was a really cool trailer. And it kind of, I think it wrong-footed us at the start by sort of, it is a group of stalkers sitting around a campfire, which is sort of the iconic like social like setting of Stalker, and discussing like various adventures they've been on in the zone. It had kind of a almost got him vibe.
Yeah. The
that
Batman
episode of the
animated series. Yeah, sure.
And I think it opened on such a, oh, well, I ran into these skirmishers, and then it's just sort of a run and gun sequence that we see. And it really felt very unstalker-like, I would say. I found it alarming. I think when we were discussing it on the stream, you said that it felt a bit Call of Duty-ish, right? Where it's like really crisp weapon feel, I guess. You're putting all rounds on target. And it looked fine, inoffensive, but also really bland and not as colorful as Stalker usually is. But then it started getting more into the like, I think the way I described it is, it felt like we're sort of looking at the zone in different ways, different experiences that exist
Sure.
within it. There's the weird secret science labs. There's the wilderness full of those anomalies that can like suddenly suck you into a lightning bolt, for instance, and like kill you.
Yep.
There's freakish monsters out there. And then finally, we sort of get this reveal that I assume it's the villain, is someone who's sort of become the self-appointed custodian of the zone, someone who
True
loves
believer.
the zone,
Yeah.
and wants to guard it and protect it. And they're willing to do anything to accomplish that. And the sort of rapid cut of memorable places and sequences in the Stalker series sort of being brought back to life here. And yeah, it totally won me over there because it was at once like, it looks like a modern Stalker, which to a degree is all I needed, but also it looks like a Stalker in dialogue with the cultural artifact that Stalker became, which
Right,
was
right.
a weird object of like cult fascination.
Yeah. I didn't expect to see it this year at all. And I think years of
Not
not
that
knowing
much of it. I just expect, all
Right.
right, because how they've shown it in the past is like,
Little
here's
clips.
30 seconds of a kind of environmental thing.
Yeah.
We're building a thing, and this felt like, oh. So then when they slapped a release date on it, it was like, oh, I guess maybe this game's a little further along than...
Yeah.
Was some of that actual gameplay, do we think? Or,
Oh, it was all. I think that was.
Because we're in the zone now. I feel like we're
in the
because
zone.
because of ray tracing, some things that used to be pre-rendered cinematic only levels of lighting is now in gameplay.
No, that was all. That
I think
felt
that was
real
all
time.
Okay.
gameplay. Yeah, I
Okay,
think.
I wasn't sure.
But yeah, no, I mean, you point out, like, in the past, the history of Stalker 2 is so sordid that, like, I remember once there was a Stalker 2 teaser that was, I shit you not, a blue particle effect, like, glowing on a dark screen. Like, that was it.
Right.
So it's been a long, like, kind of tortuous journey.
And how this one even was announced originally felt very shady and like, oh, you just announced Stalker 2, but like this isn't a game. Like, is this just to prove interest in the IP to get
Right, it
funding?
wasn't clear. Yeah.
And then at some point, like it seemed like kind of Microsoft came along and was like, all right, we're gonna make sure this comes out. We're gonna make this Xbox and PC exclusive.
Yeah.
And, then it felt a little more official.
I did go check. I don't see anything that says this is gameplay, but
It looked,
but
nothing about it looked deceptive.
yeah, I wasn't like, oh my god, that looks too good.
Also, they announced a date
Not
that's
too
like
good,
roughly a
but-
year from now. So
Yeah,
it was a specific date, like April 28th, I think.
I would bet
Or
we
22nd.
see a longer gameplay trailer, like within the next 4 months.
Yes.
We see like uncut gameplay.
Unless Kato's theory is correct. And
In which case, it's still
there's
part
no
of
game
There's
at
no
all.
game. There's no game. We're gonna put it together from assets sometime in the next whatever. The funny thing is that I said, well, Microsoft started with Stalker. Not true. What did they start with?
Starfield.
They start with Starfield.
Oh, wow.
Which,
Yeah.
which
Wow.
unfortunately,
Gene Park's Starfield.
Gene Park is innocent. J'accuse. The Washington Post released the Starfield trailer and the behind-the-scenes Starfield video,
Including the release date.
including the release date, 10 minutes before
Yeah.
the Xbox showcase, the Xbox/Bethesda showcase went live.
Which now that all makes a little more sense.
Now that we've read,
that when we were going, why the fuck hasn't this been taken down?
and the answer is
Because it happened as soon as the event started.
and because Harold Goldberg, writing for the Washington Post, was doing a piece on that
Right,
game.
yeah, there's a big behind the scenes,
Yes.
kind of like Game Informer-ish sort of profile that would normally that's where like that
a
kind of thing would-
Vulture-ish, much like Harold's GTA piece or Red Dead piece for Vulture. It doesn't say much in terms of what that game is.
Right.
I think Todd Howard's like Skyrim, but in space. What if
All
Han
right.
Solo?
That-
And that's basically what the trailer showed us.
Yeah.
Was like a spaceship, some setting type of stuff. You know, here is a helmet that says "Don't wear" on it behind glass.
I mean, it doesn't say it, like it, something is clarifying of it is like, well, it's not. They're not making Mass Effect, right? Like it's not like you're going off visiting.
But it's so weird because some concept art or locations also leaked. I don't know where those leaked from because they weren't in that trailer.
It's the alien question.
But if you look at those,
There's aliens.
those look like very inhabited places. Those are not like. Those are not No Man's Sky. These are new planets filled with organic life, but not any culture or something like
Because
that.
that would seem like that would be a very boring quest.
Who knows? Maybe they could build a game around. I don't know what they would be thinking they'd be doing versus what they end up doing. But like, I'm now scrolling to try to find these images so you can see what I'm talking about. But you know, it was a very inhabited world with big
yeah,
sci-fi
I guess my
cities.
question, like, is this more the humanity expanded into the cosmos, and then these are the
wanna know if there's
factions that have
aliens,
occurred,
right,
or
right,
is this
right.
you're visiting other planets and interacting with different
Right.
species and all that sort of thing?
I would say what I saw looked like. I guess I couldn't tell you. Starfield. Here, I'm showing you this artwork. That looks like a human settlement.
That does look like a human settlement.
That's a deep jungle. Mm-hmm. That's a big settlement with like skyscrapers. That's a cave.
So that makes me think it's mostly
Okay, but wait. That's a big field with like big animals walking towards you with like a bunch of tentacle legs.
But like organic life,
that's
that you need to shoot.
Okay, what about this?
that looks alien.
That looks alien.
That looks alien.
That's like a domed alien city on the sea.
That looks like alien.
That's a Gungan city.
But that could be humans. It could be humans have built
That's just like the
domes.
biome that they're in.
Right.
Oops.
Who could say? So,
If
What
you can
if-
DM me, I won't even tell anyone. Like I won't share it. Like aliens.
What if-
yes, no?
Let me know.
What if humans are the aliens? That in this human diaspora,
We haven't seen the face
different
of the
cultures,
pilot.
Yeah.
True.
You know?
What if all aliens?
What if all aliens? Aren't we aliens?
Well, it's
The
like
human
from this
heart
common
to others.
beginning, we spread throughout the
spread
stars,
out,
and
and now
immediately,
we're-
like in our environment and the culture that's shaped by it, we become alien to one another.
Exactly. There was a mech. There was a robot. I don't know if it was a mech.
It's open for debate.
It's over. I didn't see a cockpit. That to me makes me think it's just a remote
No,
control
it kind of
robot
looked like
or a drone.
interstellar, like sort
Sure,
of
sure. Yeah,
helper
yeah.
robot.
The
Which I guess is going to be your what was the dog in Fallout 3?
dog meat,
Yeah.
named
Kinda-
after the dog in the book, A Boy and His Dog, also named Dog Meat.
Kind of seemed
Fucked
like
up
that.
book.
Oh yeah.
Some fucked up things happen in that book. Depends on how, fucked up book. Other Microsoft stuff. Very brief taste of something called Contraband, which was like a 70s Steely Dan heist game that we got very little of. Like nothing of except flavor. I like the flavor.
It's good flavor.
It's good flavor. We got Battlefield gameplay. Battlefield 2042. Climate disaster. Parentheses, not political climate.
Yeah,
I mean,
so
refugees, but
it's so weird. Like this song and dance they got to do, where it's like, yeah, we're not really commenting on politics, but the text of the game itself is a comment on politics.
Yes.
Like the text of the game is, we're headed for massive climate disruption, and we already have a system of nation states that if you have to flee your homeland for some reason, you're fucked. Like you immediately like become, effectively. I think they use the term like. What's the term they use?
It's like it's a word that basically means stateless, but is like not that.
But you almost get like unpersoned, right, in that dystopian setting where it's like
Fuck, what were they called? No pats.
no pats,
Not
yes.
expats, but
right.
no pats.
Right, and that's kind of
Unpatriated.
so the text of the game is like this is we've already kind of built this world to some extent, and so it's very weird that then they get caught out doing this ridiculous song and dance where it's like. We don't want it to. We're not commenting on politics. We just wrote a thing that's explicitly like political. Yeah. Now, will they have any things to say that are interesting about it? I don't know. Fundamentally, it's the series that like wants you to jump out of literally wants you to jump out of the jet and like shoot down a helicopter with a rocket and then fall into another jet. That's the series.
That's the series.
And that can be pretty fun.
More players than ever. Now there's a big tornado.
Yeah, the session I saw a little bit of this in their preview session where they were talking about like how they're going to make 128 players work. Because if you've played, sometimes one of the things that can make Battlefield really uneven is that sometimes maps are just too fucking big for, even with like large numbers of players on them, it can be a little sparse and a little frustrating that you don't get like, where do I go to get the cool gunfights, or where do I go to get the like cool vehicle stuff? So the way they're trying to construct these maps is they're trying to create like nodes that funnel people into different like types of action, and then there's spaces that like lead into other versions of Battlefield action. So it seems like they're really trying to solve that problem of people like spreading out too thin.
I guess the storms and things like that can probably sort of like compress the arena in certain directions as they go on.
Are there spaces for my brother Patrick and I to duel like we did in Chivalry 2 out now?
I think so.
Probably.
I think that should become our new thing, is finding games
Where we can
we're participating in theory in
Crowbar versus sickle.
a larger fight, but these two brothers are just constantly finding themselves dueling.
Yeah. Some sort of Highlander type situation.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. I found you.
Well, I mean, the fact that we re-rolled matchmaking enough times to get into the same matches.
Right, because Chivalry 2, which seems like a blast, I want to play some more of it.
Yes.
Has cross-play, but it doesn't have parties across different platforms.
Right.
So we had to end on console. You can't pull up a server browser, at least
Which
on PS5.
makes sense. They don't really allow that kind of
But
stuff.
that meant that we couldn't choose a server to be on together. So we both just had to count in and go 3, 2, 1, go.
And it worked on the second time.
It did work on the second time. It
Yes.
did. We timed it out right, and we got lucky.
Yeah.
And maybe Chivalry 2 noticed, who could say, maybe the
some
soul of
developer
the
was like,
game.
all right, just flag it.
Soul of the game was like, these two are destined to face each other on the
It's like a wise
field
and
of
old
combat.
character in a rom-com who's
Yes.
like they just don't see.
I got to bring them together.
They just have to be together. Go on, you fool! Get after him.
Psychonauts 2.
Crowbar and sickle.
It says it's a crowbar versus sickle.
Yes.
That's good.
A rift apart.
A rift apart, which people have told us the joke there is a ripped fart.
Yeah, and I tweeted at the community manager. Apologies, James, if that's not your official title anymore. James Stevenson, who's one of their kind of like the public-facing guy for a lot of their stuff. I tweeted at him. I was like, "Hey, is that true?" And he responded with a GIF of like a Power Ranger. It looked like Power Ranger looking thing, kind of like tootin', but also with like a peace sign. So I chose to interpret that as yes.
That sounds like a yes to me. Psychonauts 2 is coming out. That has a date now, right?
August, yes.
August 25th.
It looks awesome. I'm very excited.
Are you a big Psychonauts person?
Well, I feel like
You're a big
there are
platformer
there are
person.
layers of that.
Yeah,
like
yeah,
there
yeah,
are people
sure.
who are
Sure.
one of my friends is one of those people. Like they
Yeah.
have all sorts of merch, and like that game just really like spoke to them, and like is like an all-time favorite. I really liked Psychonauts, and I'm glad they're making another. When I a couple of years ago when I saw like a slice of a level, it looked fucking awesome. I was actually kind of taken mostly by how good the platforming and combat worked, which is like not the strongest element of the original. Like it's functional, but really it's the imagination of that game that sings so
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
And watching them play it, I was heartened by how much fun it looked to do the play part. So if they can make all that fit together, that's really exciting. And yeah, like I think I mentioned during the stream, but like I think they had mentioned at some point, or I'd heard at some point that like they'd cut a lot of content towards the tail end of the game's development because that was a crowdfunded game, and it was like that's just the only way they were going to be able to stay within their budget. And then when they got bought by Microsoft more or less said like, "Do you want to like just chill and add the rest of that?" And so studios getting acquired by big companies is often fraught and a problem, but that's kind of cool that they were able to more fully complete the game. And that came out in August. I mean, there's actually like a
Nice.
decent, like the first
Stuff
half of
is
this
coming.
year was like a little like touch and go on game releases, but especially if you're into smaller stuff, like there seems to be like a nice rhythm of big and small, like
Hitting.
this summer going forward.
There's some Fallout 76 stuff that I have nothing to say about. I tried playing that game again last year. It didn't really catch me. I did start playing after they added NPCs, but I don't think I got deep enough in. Maybe I didn't. Maybe that stuff would have been earlier. I don't know. I'm not going to vouch. Other big stuff worth saying, or not big, but I thought that game Somerville looked really cool.
Yes.
It seems like alien invasion, and you and your family have slept through it, and you wake up and you're like, oh no. Very Inside vibes, which apparently one of the co-founders of the studio that Inside was made by, Play Dead, broke off to co-found this other studio to make this game Somerville, called Jump Ship is the name of that studio. That's not dated, but that looked really neat.
Rob, how would Somerville respond to an alien invasion?
Depends what part of Somerville.
Okay.
It might also depend what year you're talking about. But I would say there are parts of Somerville that would take it in stride and probably send those aliens packing. I think there's also parts of Somerville that would immediately fold up like a tent.
And like just join up, like take me away. What do I need to go to the alien labor camps?
Yeah,
like,
pretty much.
That seems all right.
Yeah. Like, I don't think Union Square is going to be putting up much of a fight. Like,
Sure. Yeah.
to be clear, I would also be like among those people.
To go to the labor
Sure.
camp?
Yeah, I would be like my big plan would be some sort of like Shaun of the Dead, like I must get to back bar and I'll write it out. And immediately like the aliens burst through the door. I'm like, well, you got us. All right, what do you need me to do?
Another similar, not similar, 2D pixel art, but lots of really great lighting on it game was replaced.
Damn. Yeah.
Looked so distinct and cool. We immediately were like, oh, I hope this motherfucker ain't canceled. I hope the developer.
Well, I
on
also
this,
thought there was also halfway through had a worry in the pit of my stomach, like Last Light is a game.
Last
night.
night.
Last
Last-
night.
the last night.
The last night.
Yes.
As I understand, that game is still in development.
I believe
to
so.
some degree.
Yeah,
And
I
so I was
think
like,
so.
shit. Are we all
getting
getting excited for the re-release, like re-debut of that game? So
It looked. I
it's
think it
comforting
looked
to.
distinct enough.
It had a much more
that-
action vibe. Like I was
Yes.
curious to see the combat that they showed was hard to parse. Like, well, what am I doing? How much is this a cutscene?
Mm-hmm.
But the platforming, kind of like exploration sections, like the part where
Yeah.
they're like climbing the neon sign on the side of a building was just like, oh, I mean, just it makes all of these kinds of things are like offshoots of like these newfound experimentations in what is 2D art and like what do we do
Right.
with pixels, and we see some of this in like the 2D HD stuff that Square does, and like it's like a really like we went through the full loop of like, oh, it's so cool to make pixel art games and like throwbacks, and then that got like pretty tiring to the point where even me, someone who those games are supposed to speak to, would see that and be like, like I can't do
Yeah.
this anymore. Like I need something unique
A little bit more.
about it.
Yeah.
But and then you see the game like the was it Electrocad?
Electhead.
Electrocad, like the mechanics of that then like go beyond the pixels, and I was like that just seems neat, and like
Right.
I'm okay with like
Right.
them taking those creative choices. Anyway, it's all to say it's neat to see that now become not just nostalgia bait, but like something of its own.
Right.
Like they're finding like a new voice within like that existing kind of pixel framework, and
Totally.
also lighting. Like lighting seems
It looks so
key
good.
to making this seem interesting.
Speaking of 2D things, really quick, just to jump ahead, I want to shout out this game called They Always Run, which just showed on the PC gaming show, which is similar, like really cool looking 2D combat.
That sounds like Minority Report type stuff.
I also thought that because that's where that line is from, right?
Yeah. Everybody runs.
Everybody runs. That's what it was. Everybody runs. This seems like more. I would put this in like the flashback out of this world
Yes,
sci-fi,
okay.
but way more actiony. Lots of like dodging and ducking and jumping and rolling
Ooh.
under
Yeah.
and slashing. I'll jump ahead a little bit here. Some walking around, some exploration, some wild sword
alright.
stuff. Seemed neat. That's all.
Flashback remains one of like the all-time, like when I think of like
Yes.
what is a cool game
Yes.
in my internal like mental dictionary, Flashback.
I almost referenced it the other day because I don't remember what game we were talking about, but we were talking about something where it wasn't all the way open, but there was a couple. Oh, it was Ratchet. We were talking about Ratchet and Clank. I think you'd mentioned that there were certain levels that get really wide open. And I think about the times in Flashback where that
Yeah.
whole game is linear. That game has a level-based thing, and there are levels that are very straightforward, but there are also levels where it's like, okay, well, you have a bunch of tasks to do. When you're on Earth in the beginning, it's like you got all these jobs to go do to raise your rank as like a bounty hunter and job taker. Flashback, all-time great game. People should play. I was gonna say they should remake Flashback, but they did, and it wasn't very good.
I don't think I've ever. I definitely
One of my
I
favorite
definitely
games of all
rented
time.
Flashback,
Very high up.
and I think I bounced off the difficulty and never got up
That makes
over that
sense.
hump as a kid.
Sure.
Because they ported that. I played that. I know it was a PC game, but they
I played
definitely
it on
had
Genesis.
A
There's a SNES and a Genesis
So
version
Out of
of
This
it.
World was famously broken in terms of
Yes.
difficulty.
Maybe that's what I'm actually thinking of. I probably actually played Out of This World and didn't play Flashback.
Like that game on
Flashback's the
console
jungle
was just
one, right? And then Out of This World is the more
Flashback starts as a jungle one, and then it becomes like a cyberpunk
Right,
and
but I
then
mean when people
alien
think
thing.
like
that
Flashback,
first scene, yes.
I think I actually played Out of This World.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, but like the very similar games in some ways. But yeah, Flashback fucking rules.
Other
They're remaking
Xbox
it
stuff.
again.
No, they're not.
I'm pretty sure I got a press release about that
Really?
at some point.
Okay.
Third time.
Third time's a charm. Plague's Tale Requiem. I know y'all both liked that game, right?
Did you?
Did you ever play that?
No, I think I just mostly liked the idea of it.
We
I
saw a
looked-
demo that
I
we
looked
really liked.
approvingly from afar.
Yeah,
and I was
okay.
like, cool.
Well, I think
You played it and loved it.
I don't even know that I'm necessarily disagree with Rob. It just hit like I was like it's an action adventure game with some puzzles and some stealth and a lot of those and some combat and a lot of those individual elements don't work very well. Where if you were to watch them isolated, you would go, not really sure I want to spend 12 hours doing this. But like the world, the aesthetic, all that stuff just worked enough for me that for the parts that I did like being in this space, being with this brother and sister, the weird sort of lore that they were building, and really the aesthetics. Like the aesthetics were like so key to what makes that game have click. I was able to forgive all that other stuff. It didn't cause enough friction, I guess.
Sure.
Like I was able to just get to the next thing and then get enough of the thing I liked to keep moving. And there was enough there that I was like really excited whether they did just another game or another game in that world. I was like, okay, like pretty easy to pick up some lessons from here and make something that hits a broader audience. And also I was excited that the Game Pass picked it up because I think A Plague Tale is on Game Pass now. The original I think is also on there, or was at one point. Because it feels like it fits in that space of game that people might not be willing to take a chance on.
Spend $60 or $70 on.
Right,
but
and it's like for that developer, it's like, well, do they charge 40 and then like make? I mean, it's just Game Pass kind of solves the issue where it's like they make their money back, they get to make the game they want to make, and then you have a huge audience that can start taking a chance on that. And one thing we didn't talk about because this came out right before E3 was that Microsoft announced that they're going to produce hardware for their cloud stuff, and so they're going to do like some USB stick equivalent. They're also going to get integrated apps into smart TVs across the board. And even when during their show, it was a lot of coming to PC or Windows 10, I guess I should say.
Yeah.
You know, Xbox, and then also Xbox Cloud Gaming. Because not every game will come, but I mean, I'm sure that's the plan. But that's kind of a differentiated category. So
That makes sense. Speaking of moving on, we should move on to Halo Infinite, which I think they did it right. We have had conversations coming into this saying,
what do they do?
what do they do? Because remember to set the stage a little bit. Halo Infinite had been rumored for a long time. It had been
they announced it extremely early.
Right, exactly. So they announced it very early, and there have been lots of rumors about what it was.
Sure.
And then last year they showed it. It was supposed to ship last year.
It was supposed to be a launch title.
It was supposed to be a
They
launch
announced it,
title.
They showed it, announced it as a launch title.
Right, and then the blowback, the memification, people really didn't like some
It
screenshots.
turned during the stream.
It
wasn't like after
absolutely.
the fact, like
Yes.
it developed and snowballed. Like almost as soon as they were showing the game. And I think this, we were talking earlier about like how maybe some of our job is to be a little more open and understanding of like games and development.
Right, I watched that trailer and was like, okay, it's a Halo game.
Oh, see, I don't know. Like I watched it and I was like, I was
the person who was like, okay. But that's how I felt about, so here's the thing is,
You don't really care for these games.
I loved Halo 1 through 3.
All right.
And then I played Halo 4 and didn't like it at all. And I played Halo 5 and thought it was bad.
I agree with those things. But
So why would I feel so I saw Halo 6 and was
Sure.
like, or Infinite, and was like, okay.
Right. I don't know.
Anyway,
I looked at that. I looked
still-
at that and like immediately was like, this has already gone bad and people are going.
What was
to
it about that trailer that you thought was especially bad?
It looked really bland.
I think many of us are still sort of chasing that moment when we first saw Halo, right? Like, I mean, to an extent, like Halo 2
You'll never see
opens
Halo for the
on-
first time again.
Yeah, but I think they're still kind of chasing that, right? Like the sort of awe-inspiring, like, wow, I didn't know games could do this. And they're up against two things now. One is that more and more games like can look like anything. There's a lot of spectacular games,
Right.
but two, Halo is kind of boxed in aesthetically in some ways to not be able to go in some of these directions because, like, then it's not Halo.
Then
It's not hyper realistic.
Right.
It's also not hyper stylized.
Right.
Like
it's
kinda
very readable, as Rob said during that stream, in contrast to something like Battlefield, for instance, where it's willing to throw so much on the screen that it overwhelms the senses in some cases. Halo has to be legible.
With every passing game, those multiplayer maps look more and more like really nice laser tag arenas.
Sure.
And I think once upon a time, like when Halo first came out, maybe I was a little older than this, but there was a time when like the laser tag arena was one of the coolest places on earth.
Right.
And yeah, so I think there's a bit of that, and yeah, it's just familiarity probably breeding contempt. But I think to the point like of this conversation, it kind of feels like they're trying to slough off the expectation and
Yes.
pressure that comes with being Halo. Like, you know what? We're a shooter.
Yeah.
Like, we're a multiplayer shooter. The man in the armor grabs the laser sword and like there's only one of them, and he runs around and racks up a bunch of cheap kills until somebody with shoddy comes up and fucks up his day, and then the whole cycle repeats.
And then a fucking car comes out of nowhere. In some ways,
Yeah.
that trailer felt like a Battlefield trailer in that it was built about, I mean, there was a narrative bit where there was a second Cortana, or a post-Cortana AI assistant who...
We live in a post-Cortana world.
We live in a post-Cortana
Okay,
world.
what I would love if the story of that campaign is Master Chief is supposed to be like getting this AI situation under control, but he keeps fucking bonding with them.
Yeah.
And he's starting to be like, no, I can just set my I can set my AI family up, like, to keep them safe.
We're going to start
I
my
was
own
supposed
AI
to be
colony.
deleted. Huh, weird. Immediately jams her into a steel jack.
Second one in, yeah. You're
here
both
we-
in here now.
Yep.
But after that story bit, there was the big multiplayer thing, and it was just like, here's the chaos and joy of a Halo multiplayer match. We don't need to resell you what Infinite is. We don't need to here are the bullet points.
Well, it's not a launch game
Here are
anymore.
right.
Like the expectation of a launch game is like
This is moving systems.
This is the reason to buy this, and now it has moved into a category which will probably be helpful for both the developers and like how that game is pitched. Is like it's a bigger Halo, and also the multiplayer is going to be free to play, and sort of detached from the campaign.
Which is cool.
And that's probably
Sure.
healthier all around.
Oh, and Master Chief has grapple now.
Okay, he has a grappling hook. We had that in that Infinite demo that we saw before, right?
And the grappling looked like fucking shit in that demo. Like it was.
Sure.
It was
Did it
really,
look good today?
They didn't show enough of the campaign. Like it looked cool. It looked cool in the multiplayer stuff.
I'm shrugging for the audio.
Which at least gives me a little more confidence that maybe it's a little more. Like it is also the case that for all the problems or the expectations of a true next-gen game, right? That like people were kind of instilling upon the reveal of Halo Infinite. It was also, I think, a really poorly constructed demo. Like I actually think like even if the visuals were cranked
it felt
up,
very.
It was slow.
Yes.
It didn't.
The thing that I liked about those first Halo games is those fights felt really tense and tactical. I almost always played on a slightly higher difficulty. I wasn't playing on Legendary, but I was playing on Heroic.
Yeah.
And so
the way it's meant to be.
That's what they say, which I hate that they say that.
I know.
But that sense of like I have limited choices, but if I use what I have well, I can overcome difficult odds and make progress. And you're right that demo did not give me any of the like, ooh, what's going to happen here?
No, the use of the grappling hook was like very boring. I was like, well, if this is all this is, then I don't know why you added this to the game.
Right.
And I also think Halo just suffers from the fact that it is slower. Games have, in general, just kind of keep getting faster to a certain degree. Yeah. And Halo, by nature, is much slower paced. And so I think that makes it, it's a lot. That demo was a lot of like clearly panning an analog stick like across a vista. And I think it was that specific moment combined with a poor demo, and also, I mean, like just before that, they announced, either during that or later, they announced like, yeah, we don't have time to put ray tracing in. Like, we're gonna patch that in later. Like that's a bad. So none of that stuff will be present in the one that they ship.
Wait, it will be? You're saying?
Yeah.
You believe?
I believe.
There's a bunch of other stuff. You want to just call out some things from that Microsoft event? Because I mean, as it is developing, as we're talking about it, wow, there were a lot of things that worth talking about at the very least.
Yeah, let me.
I have a full list.
Yeah, but I'm gonna look at it myself.
Flight Simulator, still flying.
Still flying.
Still waiting for that smuggling expansion.
Age of Empires 4. Still Age of Empires?
Tough to show in a trailer, right? It's like it's.
There are other trailers out there that are.
Yeah, it's such a traditional RTS in some ways. Well, I don't know that. I'm assuming by the way it looks. But like Relic's making it. I don't know what that means for Age of Empires.
I didn't realize that was Relic. That's interesting.
Yeah, they got like. I want to say I think Relic is Sega owned, and
That's correct.
I think they got farmed out to do this. So I'm curious what it means. It looks pretty. I'm curious like how it plays.
Yeah. Outer Worlds 2, they showed some comedy bits where they're like making
a really funny trailer that
as
I like pointed out while we were watching it, was
the good vibes version.
Well, it was like it was like the comic send up that Devolver was really trying to tries to capture, while also didn't. It wasn't punching down. It was like I saw on Twitter someone say it's very funny to see a trailer making fun of announcement trailers that also has a bunch of developers nodding their heads, going like, yeah.
Totally.
And that is also a game that I am excited to see if they get sort of a similar treatment to Double Fine and Psychonauts, where maybe a little bit bigger of a budget, a little more like a longer leash. Like, I think we were all more on the same place, like not really liking that game by the end. Like I started pretty strong, where it's like, oh, I like these types of games, and then other than like, Pavarti,
a handful of characters,
it all feels like. And maybe this is to your point about like maybe they get a little more resources. So much of that game, so many parts of that game felt a little half-built.
Yes.
Even some of the more like memorable locations, like when you finally get to one of the wealthy planets.
Yeah.
And like sort of the imperial core of the system. Even that like looks visually distinct. It's kind of cool, but still feels kind of empty and weird and lifeless in a way that like the starting town never did.
It for whatever reason, I think about that game a lot, and it feels. And this is such a cliched critique to make about a RPG.
Yeah.
But theme worldy, and I don't mean that in a do the things one after the other linear way that sometimes you talk about like MMOs. I mean that going to that planet felt like going to Disney, and now you're in the Magic Kingdom, and now you're in World of Tomorrow or whatever, and now you're in Epcot, and that's what it felt like to go from world to world there. It felt so like, oh, I'm switching modes, I'm going over here, and this is a little boxed in, and it's meant to be understood as being almost abstracted
Yes.
from a whole that you can't see because it would be too big. And that's fine, but so much of what I get out of the joy of that style of game, New Vegas doesn't feel boxed in, even though it very much is, even in ways where there are invisible boxes all around you being built by the different levels of enemies and what types of gear you can get and all that stuff. So like, it's weird that that game felt like that, and I'm curious about the second one, but I'm not. My expectations are middling at this point.
Yeah, I would still sign up for a second one because here's the weird thing: the memorable characters and dilemmas were really memorable and really well executed. It just felt like it led with all its best material, and then it steadily sort of runs out of gas. So maybe Outer Worlds 2.
And I never played any DLC either.
Same.
DLC seemed cool, but
Yeah.
I didn't stick with it. Like I played a bit with Edward during the last save point. It seemed neat.
Okay, sure. Also there, Redfall, new Arcane Austin joint.
Yeah.
They closed with an Arcane game, which
is
was
cool.
surprising.
Yeah.
Feel a little targeted by that. Arcane Austin, I should disclose, Evan Narcissus, who co-wrote that New Day comic with me, apparently wrote on it. I only found that out after.
When you
I
tweeted
remembered
it, he just
vaguely.
tweeted it out?
Yeah, I did. I actually suddenly vaguely remember, like, oh yeah, he mentioned working with Arcane on some stuff like a year ago or whatever. So we never talked about details about that. But that is open world, single
That's-
or co-op. Though the trailer really emphasized 4 characters working together using abilities.
Which is what you and I were discussing after watching the
Yes.
trailer was, well, what does that mean for solo play?
Yes.
Like, there was the sequence that sticks out to me in particular was 2 people stuck on the ground. As
not
a horde.
gameplay, by the way. But
Right. Yeah.
CG.
Well, it was
but
kind of like
seemed-
kind of like the Suicide Squad trailer from last year, in which like
Yes.
a CG trailer that is meant to convey mechanics.
Yes.
Because they're not ready to show the game. But there's a sequence where like 2 characters are running along the ground, running away from this horde, and would otherwise be cornered. And then a character like shot them like a magic elevator that like brought them up to the rooftop.
Right.
And I was like, well, so if that's the sell of like this is what we envision the game to be.
Yeah.
What does that mean when you're playing by yourself? Is that AI characters? Is there other ways that's accounted for? I don't know, and it's too early to tell. But it's not even like a red flag. It's more just I wonder how they're
totally
handling that.
And also because it is a shift for what that studio has made in the past.
Right.
Arcane Austin was the Prey team, and we were pretty high on Prey around here. You know that, but they have not made what this is being called an immersive shooter versus an immersive sim, right? And it seems like it's very actiony, and the fact that they're leaning on terms like open world
Prey had a lot
suggests
of
something.
action.
It did more than Dishonored,
Right.
even, right? So I'm curious. I'm
Well, Prey had a lot of action that you had. There was no choice. Like you were meant to be in
a
combat,
fight.
right?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
whereas Dishonored,
Yes.
you know, the whole stealth, non-stealth. Whereas
Right.
Prey was like, okay, maybe sometimes you can walk around a thing, but in general, we expect you to be
right.
busted up.
Apparently, they
aliens.
also worked on Youngblood a little bit, which I barely touched Youngblood. I know you
Yeah,
bounced off
at
of
some
it,
point,
right?
at some point, I wished, or maybe I will get around to doing that before
Yeah.
Wolfenstein 3 gets, whenever that's announced, because I do want to see where that story is important to the arc of that series. But yeah, I didn't get a chance to play that.
Yeah, so I'm curious about that. Other stuff that was there. Shout outs to Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes and Eiyuden Chronicle Rising, 2 of the kind of Suikoden inheritor games. One
Or
coming out
made by the actual
2022.
people
Yes,
that made
yeah, yeah.
Suikoden.
2022 and 2023 for those. So a while.
So what does that? Wait, what does that mean? Like what? There are 2 different games?
No, I think it's a sequel. I think they're 2 different games.
Oh,
I think they're saying, hey, there's another one coming. I guess I
Alright.
don't know for a fact. I was guessing. That's how I
That's
read
cool though. I
Eiyuden.
always wanted to play Suikoden.
Suikoden's
People were
games
like,
are
it's so
sick.
cool to collect 102 characters.
108.
I think 108. I'm sorry.
It's okay. 108 stars. It's fine. It doesn't matter to me.
Okay.
It's not a big deal. I'm just saying. It's
I
been a long
I
time.
didn't cast myself as the Suika expert.
Yeah, it's fine.
What was Brad? How did Brad pronounce it?
Suikoden?
Suikoden.
Suikoden.
Recording.
Yeah, I really liked Suikoden 2 as a kid.
Okay.
I played 1, 2, and 3, I want to say, but I really liked 2.
3 was when they jumped to PS2.
3,
I remember one on a ship.
I think that was 3, and I think I
Okay.
didn't like 3. And I have a friend, I think that's correct.
Well, in general, people
Correct.
only really like the first 2.
That is correct, yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I think
I
that's
remember the
mine.
cover art for 3. I think is like blue and
Yes, with the ship.
with the
I
Yeah,
like.
yeah, yeah.
Those were like one of the
That
first
is what I
E3s
believe.
that I covered.
Yeah.
Was I think somehow I found myself interviewing the Suikoden team at.
4 is the ship, so 4 might be the one I didn't like.
okay.
Maybe I still
All right.
liked 3. Anyway, nice to have one of those coming also. Other stuff, I feel like we skipped one other big, Atomic Heart, we saw some gameplay of. I think, Rob, you said,
I'm still not convinced that's a game.
I think they released some longer gameplay.
I know. I just feel like
recently.
I've seen 1,000
Yeah,
slice trailers
Yeah.
for that. I am now at this point don't need to see any more of
the
that.
thing is
and I
they
want
put out a 10-minute gameplay trailer in 2019.
That's,
So they've
that's
been
also,
making
that's also
vertical
kind of what I
slices.
mean,
Yeah,
right? Like,
yeah.
I want to see what. It seems like it's getting closer to being a thing.
Yeah.
but-
First-person game in the sort of Bioshock style, Prey style, ability left hand, gun right hand type of thing, exploring facilities.
It's a Game Pass game, right? too?
I think that yes, it is a Game Pass.
And that makes it confident that it's a real game. Like I don't know if it's a
Yeah,
good game, but it's
yeah,
like, well, they
sure.
signed a deal to put it out on the
Yes.
on the platform.
That makes sense. I think that's kind of the biggest stuff. There were other things there, but I think we could probably move on. Finally, Square Enix.
Yep,
A lot of Guardians of the Galaxy.
a lot.
Too much.
Too much. Too much.
And I think that would be true even if people were warmer.
Yes.
Like it just took too much of a
There are
shortish
very few games
presentation.
I want 20 full minutes of
Right.
in
Well-
such a short.
Well, usually the way they do that is you get the trailer, snippet of gameplay, developer interview. We'll see you in the post show where we're going to walk through gameplay, explain
Yeah.
the mechanics. So people
Right.
who want to stick around,
That's the Nintendo, the Treehouse.
Treehouse, right? Like,
Yeah.
and that's a way where you don't turn off an audience that is fine sitting through the Guardians thing,
Yeah.
because they want to see what Square Japan is up to. And then you turn an audience hostile because you've just kind of outstayed your welcome, regardless of the quality of the thing.
But Square didn't have maybe as much to show as people were
This is
hoping.
also
This
true.
is the other
Yeah.
thing. Like, this is the weird. Like, I think the way we opened the show, I think Square was freshest in my mind, where it's like, hey, E3 is about like showing off your wares.
Yeah.
What if the cupboard is empty? And that's kind of how the entire Square presentation
Which
felt.
means the
It's
Guardians
like-
of the Galaxy thing was almost like when you have a box of cereal as a kid and you're like, I'm going to learn every word on this box of cereal. I'm going to read it over 3 times.
Yep.
Because they showed us the same footage. So they showed us a trailer.
Yep.
And that trailer was fine.
Yeah.
90-second trailer, 2-minute trailer, whatever that was, 2:30. Then they showed us the behind the scenes. Hey, everyone's
Developer
excited
chat.
about this. That developer chat, same footage from those same
Yeah.
trailer. Then they showed us a 15-minute long gameplay segment, give or take. Maybe it was 12 minutes. And that was where most of that footage had come from. But now we get to see the dialogue options. Now we get to see the action, maybe too in-depth. Saw how slow it was. And
Yeah.
by the third time you're seeing those same jokes land, it's like, ooh, okay. And that's not even the fault of the jokes. Most
Right.
jokes don't land 3 times in a row and
Right.
still retain any humor.
Yeah. And yeah, like I
You go
think,
5 or 6 times though, like Chaos, which we'll get to, and then it gets good again.
I mean, I think if they'd done a thing where it's like, hey, we're revealing Guardians of the Galaxy, I think that gets a slightly warmer reception of like, okay, cool, I am signed up to see how you're making this game. But here
Right.
it's like, here with Square Enix is showing everything it's got,
Yeah.
and it's Guardians, and it's going to be a I don't know. I feel like the Guardians themselves are kind of a divisive property because I think how much do you like those movies, right? And then this is going to be like an attempt to file off the serial number a little bit on the movies.
James Gunn is not here, but his cultural imprint means that we have to follow
We
his
have to
echo.
do this, yeah. And so it's just it's a weird project to spend that much time with, and I ended up like. This sounds like such a cop-out, but genuinely, I hope it's good. Like,
Yeah.
a cool, like, adventure, like action-adventure RPG type thing where you're, like, going around with your crew through the galaxy, like, getting up to hijinks. That sounds cool. That didn't look like a particularly fun crew to hang out with. Like, I liked their take on Rocket.
Sure.
Groot, still got it, big guy. The magic's still here mostly. That's all fine, but none of it really sang. And then the combat did look it's weird. It was like on the one hand,
They showed
Man.
too much combat without explaining what was going on. And so, as I was trying to deduce what was occurring, like I think one of my comments during the stream was, boy, it sure feels like instead of building out the ability to play as all the characters, you're commanding their abilities.
Yes.
But those abilities look a lot cooler to do than the things that
anything
Star-Lord
Star-Lord
is
could do.
doing. And maybe that feels different when you're playing it, or maybe it's better
Yeah.
when a developer is sitting here and like, hey, let's explain how this is occurring, what systems you're playing with as the player and managing. And it's just, at a certain point, it all just kind of blurred together. And what I started seeing was like, oh, the combat here is not very snappy.
Yeah.
And it looks slow, and it all kind of just sort of melded together.
Some of those like special moves that the other characters were doing felt like cooler also because they did more damage than
Yeah.
Star-Lord did, right? Because they're supposed to they're like acting like your character's special moves, basically,
right,
right?
yeah.
And so it looks cooler, but
And
in
maybe
the end, you're the character you're controlling is just kind of running around and dodging.
Shooting pea shooters,
That's
yeah.
a good point because you're right. They feel like Star-Lord's hotbar.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah.
And I think when I first saw that combat, I was like, this would like it almost implied like I would be more interested in like the leaning in on the tactics side where it's
Right.
like, okay, Gamora, you go over here and do this. Like Rocket, you get set up over here. And that would be cool, but instead the way the whole system's activated is like, I want to shoot Austin.
Right.
And I'm just
Wow.
going to
Harsh.
unload with Rocket, Gamora.
Right.
like,
Rocket,
just-
yeah, do your RPG, then Gamora, do the sword slice.
Yeah, but it's like that's not really a tactical like it's
Pokemon.
just like I'm pointing them like a gun
Yeah.
at my
Yeah.
target,
Yeah.
and that's
Yes.
it.
And they're like passively doing damage lightly
Elsewise, right,
elsewhere.
Yeah,
but,
so that didn't look
yeah.
great.
Well,
And even the movement of Star-Lord looked kind of like weirdly slow. Like it reminded me of some of the earlier like Hulk sections of that Avengers game
Yeah.
that they made that felt like
Yeah.
just like,
it's
oh,
not,
I'm just
like too
I'm just-
heavy. Like I understand that the Hulk's supposed to be heavy, but they didn't quite like make it feel right. I don't know.
Totally.
Yeah.
Which, again, to a thing that we talked about before the podcast, this is Eidos Montreal. This is not a type of game they've made before.
They were the Deus Ex studio.
Right.
That's
that
what they were
studio
built
had
to do.
guns, but even in Deus Ex, even in the second one, not the second, the
I think this
fourth
might
one.
actually be the Thief team. I
Okay,
don't,
well, guess what?
also not
Not a combat heavy, like
cross-compatible,
less
skills.
combat heavy
right.
than the
I
Deus
might
Ex
be wrong.
games
I
even
might be
were.
wrong on that, but
Either way, it's just not what they do. And so I'm sure they've staffed up. I'm sure they've trained. I'm sure they've
Sure.
done all that stuff. But my
which is what
expectations
Crystal
are just
did
not-
when they were building Avengers, coming
Right,
off of
yes,
Tomb Raider games.
yes.
But yes, that's a big
Exactly.
pivot. Like whereas it doesn't feel as big of a pivot for Arcane with Redfall.
Right.
That seems like I can see how that extends out of
Me
what
too.
they've done
Yes,
before.
yes.
Whereas like doing a first person like slow paced immersive sim
Yeah.
is very different than a brawler with a ton of combat.
Yeah, totally. Was not the only thing they had there, despite it being 20 minutes. Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster, question mark. We were hoping that it would be, we went into that segment being like, I hope this isn't hey, the Final Fantasy games, 1 through 6, deserve to have versions available on contemporary consoles, on PC, on Steam, blah, 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 that don't look like the mobile game ports, where fans aren't expected to come in with a mod to make them look better.
Right.
And then I have no idea what those games look like. I have no idea. It said
30-second
mobile.
trailer.
Yeah.
Well, big red flag, like a mobile and PC only.
Yeah.
Didn't like that.
Don't love it.
I was poking around to see if we had learned anything more,
You
and
find
it
anything?
doesn't seem.
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
saw
there-
them say, "Oh, you buy those separately." That I've seen.
Oh, it's
someone
just like a
say.
shell for you to buy individual games.
It might even just be 6 different games. It might just be a title Pixel
Okay.
Remaster. And maybe I'm wrong about this, and what I saw was wrong, but I'm pretty sure
What
that's
does
what I saw.
Pixel Remaster even mean then? It runs at 4K.
I don't know.
The pixels look right on an HD
I can,
screen.
I can do that on
I
a
would like
computer.
that. Yeah. We don't need to talk about Avengers.
Nope.
We don't need to talk about Hitman Sniper.
Nope.
We don't need to talk about Nier Reincarnation, the mobile game that we've known about.
No,
the
when it
gacha
comes
game.
out,
When it
we'll
comes
talk
out, we'll
about
talk about it. We don't need to talk about the other 2 mobile Final Fantasy games. 3, because there's Final Fantasy VII, the first Soldier of the Battle Royale.
Yeah, it doesn't look very good.
I don't think it looks great.
I'm
Adam said that
I'm.
You're ready.
There's a there's a group of sickos out there laughing at the window of that game.
You're sickos.
I'm sickos. 100%.
What if it was on PC? I'd be sickos with you.
Yeah,
Or
the
console.
fact that it's mobile only is kind of like.
Yeah.
Makes it even sicker.
But just like I don't know.
Oh,
I really
I got to
enjoyed-
Bluetooth this DualSense to my iPhone. Fuck yeah.
The other one, I really wanted to see Babylon's Fall and be like, yo, Babylon's Fall, platinum joint.
No. Hard no.
Some of the wide shots of the city look nice.
Yeah, I think that there's some cool looking gameplay. I'm gonna go watch that longer dev interview and see if there's something there that really moves me. The combat's kind of weird. You're like posted up. If it's 1 to 4 players, it's a live service game.
Yep.
You're climbing a tower called Babylon. It's kind of a fantasy RPG looking world with some unique stuff. The camera. I kept thinking it was a mobile game because the camera in most of what we saw had the characters off to the side, and you were kind of not looking over their shoulder per se, but they were. It was almost like what was that mobile game with the sword? So like one of the first epic chair games made it. It was like Punch Out but with swords.
Yeah.
And they made a bunch of them, and like you're the king, and you know what I'm talking about. If Patrick was listening, he would know.
Hit me again.
Chair game, epic, mobile.
Shadow Complex.
No.
No. Infinity Blade.
Infinity Blade. It had
Infinity
sort of an
Blade.
Infinity Blade off to the side. If I'm remembering that game right, you're not center of the screen. You're on the side of the screen, like almost like a sort
No,
of.
because it's supposed to represent your finger, like or they're
Right. So maybe I'm wrong about that, but I'm talking about in relation to
Oh.
where you're like off Babylon's Fall, where you're
Right.
off to the side.
Right.
It's not like a behind the back thing. I'm belaboring this point, I know, but it's very strange, and it doesn't feel like it has any of the snappiness or heft of my favorite type of platinum game.
Right.
And that was disappointing. But I don't know. Maybe there will be a lot of mechanical build depth or something.
But I
that
feel like I'm
brings me
starting
back
from a
in.
lower place where I now think that game just looks bad, and I'm hoping.
Which maybe is good in the long run. Maybe it's good that I come into it feeling very bad on it and end up feeling like, okay, I was turning it. The other thing is I'm coming off of Astral Chain, which I reviewed and hated. So, or felt was, there was like 3 good levels in that game, I think. But mostly I was bored the whole time I was playing it and getting S ranks.
It was
and
long,
It
too.
was very long. It was very long.
Give me Bayonetta 3, please.
Yeah, that wasn't here.
Please.
I guess that would be at
That would be a Nintendo.
Nintendo. Life is Strange remaster and then Life is Strange True Colors.
Yep.
The psychic power of empathy.
Yeah,
Psychic
go.
power
If you look.
Go watch the original.
Yeah, if you haven't seen much of that game, go watch the original presentation from
Yeah.
a couple months back. It does a much better job, I think, of underscoring why that game could be pretty cool.
I don't think
I'm
they say
excited
the
for it.
psychic power of empathy during that one.
They show that there is the thing.
In the first one,
Yeah.
they say the words of the psychic power of empathy.
I haven't seen that trailer in 3 months,
But
but
I feel like we would have had a much.
they said
different
empathy.
reaction.
They definitely. Well, we weren't in a room.
Yeah, that's true.
You know.
I just do not remember hearing that.
I
until
did like
today.
how she's just got a watchdog's ability.
Yes.
Basically,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
you just hack people's brain, and like, but don't worry, it's cool and not alarming, because you're going to Clarence the Angel them.
I have a correction.
Ah,
This is This is March 18th.
ah.
This is in a chat I'm in. LMAO. LOL. The psychic power of empathy.
Damn it!
Wow, it hit. So
Shit.
you forgot that, and,
And
it hit
then-
twice.
It hit
Yeah.
twice. It hit
Wow.
twice.
Yeah.
So.
That's,
yes.
that's just good wordsmithing on
That's
their
just
part.
they zeroed right in on what would work. Well, that's the whole thing. Is that whole phrase? The reason we started counting it during this stream segment was because it felt like someone told them this is a bullet point. Hit
Right.
the psychic power of empathy, so that it drills into their heads, and they think, oh yeah, that's the game with the psychic power of empathy.
And what does it mean?
Bunny boy, baby
the
boom.
more we say it, the more it feels like we're saying
It's just weirder.
the power of empathy, which is psychic, instead of her power.
She has a psychic
that is
power
psychic,
called
That is
empathy.
empathy.
But
But
also,
really,
it's
it's
also just a
telepathy.
bad name. Yes, that's the thing.
She's hearing people's thoughts, and
The word empathy is misleading.
yeah, it's. I mean, she probably is empathetic. Well,
Sure.
They're choosing a very soft word for a very invasive
power. Oh, I just have empathy powers. No, you read my mind. You looked in my mind and saw an argument I had with somebody. That was
Yeah.
not just empathy.
Yeah.
You heard the words I said. You didn't just like catch a vibe.
Right, and like the thing they showcased today was like, it seems like you are, first of all, like, there's the element where if people are really going through it, you enter sort of their mindscape of
Yes.
like how the
Their
world
Nova,
as shot through their.
please.
Yeah, and you see the world as shot through their emotions, and it's very scary and symbolic and fucked up. But then, of course, you just like, well, I guess with my totally benign powers, it's time for me to just get in there with a wrench and start, just doing a little fixer-upper on these people.
Yep.
Like, it seemed like somebody was going through like massive grief, and it was like, I just got to get in there.
I can fix this.
Put me in, coach.
Yeah. A bad relationship situation between two people. And I think that the game is like, do you get involved or not? How do you handle that stuff? I'm curious about it despite this.
Yeah.
I like that initial trailer. Even when she picked up the guitar and played Creep by Radiohead, I was like, I'm ready. I'm ready for this. Let's go. Finally, Stranger of Paradise.
Yes.
Final Fantasy Origin. Concept and creative producer and character designs Tetsuya Nomura. Director Daisuke Inoue. Producer Jin Fujiwara. Story and scenario Kazushige
Nomura took
Nojima.
the beautiful art of what is Yoshitaka Amano? Isn't that the original?
Chaos.
Go look up that art for those
different.
original Final Fantasy games, and then look.
We're talking about Chaos, and they just announced Warhammer 40K Chaos Gate.
That
Sure.
was that announced?
I
I
thought
thought,
that
I
was
thought I
old.
played that last week.
Really?
I don't know.
It says August 2021.
Okay, sure. Sure, I'm seeing this 40K
Chaos
thing.
Gate.
There's always another Warhammer game. Even after we did a Warhammer Skull showcase, there's always another one.
They held a little treat back for the faithful.
I actually think this is one that we saw
Probably.
during that event.
Sounds really
Okay.
familiar.
It,
Yeah.
it seems very unlikely to do a giant
Extremely.
Warhammer thing and then save one for E3.
Yeah. Say one for the PC Gamer show at E3. Yeah, I don't think
That
No
was just
offense
good
to the
timing
PC
with that
Gamer
Chaos
show.
No,
bit.
no, but they just did a whole one. Stranger of Paradise, Final Fantasy Origin. We had heard. You know what? Credit is where credit's due.
I was going to say Imran over
Imran at Fanbyte. Final Fantasy
The
Origin.
PlayStation's about to turn off, by the way. Tap
Oh,
it.
just tap this.
That's. I mean, it doesn't. It's this.
Rumor.
Spoiler: the thing's fucking broken and
Did
it's not
you
going to
try it?
It's.
You should try it. We should try it live.
We
Okay.
will. I will explain more later.
Over the weekend, this is Imran Khan over at Fanbyte. Over the weekend, a number of rumors swirled about possible E3 announcements, as traditionally happens in the weeks leading up to the industry trade show. In particular, rumors seem to swirl around two websites, Reddit and Gaming Forum Reset Era, about a new Final Fantasy spin-off that Square Enix is announcing this year. Our sources have corroborated the rumor. It's just the name of the game is Final Fantasy Origin. Team Ninja, Koei Tecmo's in-house development team behind games like Ninja Gaiden, Neo, and the Final Fantasy fighting game Dissidia and T. So there is crossover there already. The rumors go on to say that it's a genre like Neo or the Souls game, and that it would take place in or adjacent to the world of the first Final Fantasy game on the NES. That was the rumor in the lead up here. Imran says expected to play similar to Neo, but more accessible for a wider audience, et cetera, et cetera. Those are the rumors weeks ago. Today, we've seen this game. How would you describe this game? In a word,
Chaos.
chaos. I'm here to kill chaos. What?
It
The
also.
entire thing felt like a bit.
Yes.
It looks terrible.
It does not look good. It does not look good.
Like,
I think we were maybe misled by the rumors a little bit.
yeah, it was so.
I
hadn't
throw
thought
that
of
aside. It looks like a bad character action game.
Yes, yes. But it really felt bad, and what I wanted was
Yes.
the world of Final Fantasy I,
I'm thinking of big dragons.
like very traditional fantasy stuff with because the world of Neo is tongue in cheek in many those games are very tongue in cheek in places, but they're playing like a lot of Japanese myth, very straightforward in terms of the depiction of Oni and yokai and other mythological beasts. And I was like, okay, well, if they bring that sort of attention to this kind of very traditional fantasy world in Final Fantasy I, that could be really cool. You're like walking through the woods, you're on the mountaintops, etc. Not so much. You're kind of going through an evil castle, yelling a lot, and the combat looks
Oh my
weightless.
God,
It's like they didn't. I didn't really get any sense of the mechanics. Like I don't know.
Well, there's a demo that's not working.
Yep. You know what I mean? Like the key to those types of games sometimes they can be hard to convey. Like,
Yes.
what is it like to play that? What is the weight of the animation? What is the weight of the player character?
They showed a bunch of different weapon types, which is like Neo.
Yeah.
They showed like a big, like dual-handed greatsword, doing huge combos, like spin around, jump up, uppercuts. They showed like a spear doing, dash forwards and stuff. Lots of this guy grabbing enemies and turning them into red crystals and then smashing them.
There was a lot of crystals.
There were a lot of crystals. There was like a two-handed sword, maybe a shield and a sword. Oh, but yeah, I didn't get a sense of. There was a lot of cutting between when the main character was doing combos, not here's an encounter that's playing out where you can sense the rhythm and pacing, which is probably why it felt
Nothing
so bad.
looked like there was like give or take in the action or like sort of the dance.
Right.
None of that stuff. And also, the fact that the character, like, what's his motivation? He wants to kill chaos, and the fact that every scene, like, a door opens and he's like chaos, and it's like it is again. It feels like a gag. Like he's a anime character, like the buffoon character in an anime.
Well,
He's just always going on.
It's funny you say this. I have a quote here from Nomura.
Nomura.
The concept and planning of Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy Origin came around the time after Dissidia Duodecim Final Fantasy. I thought to myself that I wanted to have a game focused not on character battles, but on locations where actions take place. After some time passed, I started planning a new Final Fantasy with the themes of, quote, a story of an angry man.
Okay.
More time passed, and I was able to combine both separate concepts into one cohesive plan, which is what you see now. Even though this is a Final Fantasy game, it doesn't feel like one. However, the blood of Final Fantasy runs thick with this game, even so. It was quite a difficult compromise, which led to challenges for this austere title. You said austere like 8 times today. It has to get out of our vocabularies. It's in there like a fucking virus. While it may take some time before the game is complete, the battle system is heavily linked to the story that incorporates a lot of bloodshed, and I hope they'll give it a shot. So it's a story of an angry man, and a focus on not character battles, but locations where actions take place.
That's Garland.
The Garland does show up. The Final Fantasy 1 boss Garland.
I
does
never
show
played
up.
Final Fantasy 1.
Oh, that was terrific. I loved that. The whole, like, there was a knight who went looking to fight chaos. All I remember was he had this beautiful set of armor, and like, okay.
Well, like, he does have a beautiful set of armor, especially compared to the main character, who seems to be wearing like workout wear.
He like rolled out of bed. He's like, I'm ready.
I'm ready to fucking
I'm
up.
angry.
I'm
Where's
angry.
the chaos?
Gotta eat it.
Yeah, but also it's like people should have looked at Garland and been like, man, that guy's clearly gonna turn evil.
Yeah, that guy's wearing some evil armor.
Like, wow, he's it's sort of like he's an armored mummy, really. I don't know. It'll probably be fine.
It's probably fine. You know.
Is that where
I
Garlean comes from?
What?
Is that where Garlean comes from?
Probably. In
Yeah.
Final Fantasy 14? Yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds
Makes
like the
sense.
sort of thing they would do,
Right.
right?
Lots of
Lots of that's like half of a nod, half of
right
a
nods.
wink.
That's the word I was looking for. Like
Yeah.
homages to
Yes,
the other
yes.
Final Fantasies.
Whew. Well, that was Square.
That was Square.
Do you want to hit play on this thing and we can live see if it works?
Yeah,
I bet it won't.
it won't.
Hold on, 1 second. Oop.
We're gonna
Let's
move it
get-
over live, even though we're in the middle of a podcast.
That's fine. We'll narrate it appropriately for the audio listeners.
Become a Jedi on PS5. Move over. Stranger Paradise, Final Fantasy Origin trial version. Within the memory of their struggle. Wait,
struggle.
go down. Let's read that. Do you see more? View product.
That-
Within the memory of their struggle, buried deep in their hearts. Dot, dot, dot.
Friends who play 5.
Okay. Play game. Can't continue using this gamer app. This data is corrupted. Delete
So
it
that
from
means,
PS5.
I believe, when it says people
Chaos.
who play, is that 5 friends who've downloaded or 5
think
friends
it's
that are
this.
currently on this screen?
I think maybe they've just seen this or have seen this in the last hour since it launched. Close gamer app. That guy's covered in blood,
Yeah.
Hence the anger.
hence the anger. I'll download this and try it. And,
Yeah,
and
my understanding is have some patience. The process to probably address this is not like it won't be an hour from now.
right,
Probably.
right.
So,
Probably not, right?
No. I will say no.
Yeah.
In fact, I would suspect it gets taken down so that it.
Do you think it was meant to be?
Yeah. No. Yes.
Launched?
Yes. I
Okay.
think this was a fuck up.
That makes sense.
which sucks. You know, a lot of work goes into
Yeah,
prep
of
something
course,
like this.
of course.
And then,
I mean, it did end by
and it's
saying
cool when
like,
they can do
hey,
stuff. It's cool when you can. That's exciting. Like that's
Right.
exciting when it's like, oh shit, the demo's out. Like, let's go check it out.
Sure.
Like that's. And also, then we could have like answered some of our questions about like,
How's
was
it
that
feel?
was that a bad trailer? Like,
Right.
once you get in there,
Right.
oh, actually,
Of
it's doing
course.
something kind of cool with
Of course.
the dodge and you know. So hopefully by tomorrow there'll be something sorted out. But it's not as easy as just like when you work on consoles, you have to. There are layers.
Yeah.
You can't just flip a switch. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, was that it?
I think that might be it. I think that could be it. Whew. We are going to wrap up here,
Yep.
and we're going to end this podcast.
Yep.
We'll be back on the internet later this week. We're going to take tomorrow, when we're recording this tomorrow,
Correct.
off. Rest our heads. I have other podcasts to go do that aren't
I was like, I
E3
might
ones.
work tomorrow and save that day for
I know,
another
yeah,
day.
this is the thing. Is
That's
like, I might
probably what I'm
also
gonna
do that, but not, yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll have more to talk about later this week because E3 technically continues. Shout outs to everyone who came through over the weekend, whether you're on the
Danielle.
podcast or not. Danielle,
Emmanuel.
Alex, Emmanuel, Jason, Joseph.
Joseph.
Lorenzo did not come through.
Wasn't he playing with them?
No, who was the other one? Who was on?
I don't know who was remote.
Jordan
Okay.
Pearson
Jordan, okay.
was on, I believe. We couldn't hear Jordan.
Team Motherboard.
Team Motherboard. Gita was
Including
here,
Gita,
obviously.
Team Motherboard.
Emily.
Emily.
That sim segment was great.
It was.
All these VODs are great. You should go back, if you're listening to this now, you should go back and watch our coverage. Because our coverage also included The Sims.
Yep.
And Patrick and I watching Elden Ring's trailer for the first time
Yeah,
together.
spending 90 minutes watching other
Souls trailers in the
I
lead
really
up.
liked it. It was good.
It was really fun. Us playing some Chivalry today. Us playing Fast and the Furious Highway Heist, which
Great.
might be my
Might-
highlight of
yeah.
E3 so far. In
It
terms
was
of-
a
but that's-
perfect morning.
But it
that
was
is,
great.
That is less on E3
Yes.
and more on how fun that game
That was really fun. That was really fun. People should go watch that for sure. Obviously, thank you, Patrick, Rob, Kato. Thank you to everybody who helped make sure that we had this space available behind the scenes, who helped Kato get equipment, et cetera, et cetera.
Jason and Motherboard did a lot of behind the scenes.
100%. A ton.
Including like, hey man, it appears my hotel room got canceled. Figured it
Fix
out.
that out. Hey, our security situation is weird. Fix that.
Fixed.
Don't worry about it. Email sent. Thank you to Bowen for letting us use the track. Miss you off the EPPL machine. Find out more about that at waypoint.zone/BOEN. People watching live and listening, if you have enjoyed this coverage, genuinely, the only reason this coverage exists is because of Waypoint Plus. If you want to support that and allow us to keep doing things like this, tighten the screws, make sure that like production is smoother in the future. Waypoint.
A lot of this was like all right, that was
knock the rust off.
Yeah, like what do we need?
Yes.
What is
Yes.
going to go wrong here? Like what do we want to do as
Yeah.
a group? What is the response? Like,
Exactly.
You know, and that part has been fun.
waypointplus.com will take you to a page that answers some questions about what Waypoint Plus is. Bonus content, bonus podcast. It allows us to do things like this. It allows us to do Twitch streams. We love your support. We're so thankful for your support. We would love even more support. We know more of you are out there listening. And if you could toss us a couple bucks a month, $5 a month, that would be great.
Yeah.
You can also buy an annual subscription now, waypoint.zone/
Or gift that to a friend.
yeah, /annual or /carrot for the gift version of the link. Anything else? You can find us twitter.com/waypoint, waypoint.vice.com. You can find me, twitter.com/Austin_Walker. Patrick,
Find me at Patrick Klopik.
Rob,
At Rob Zachney.
Kato.
At @_Kato_appears.
We'll be back later this week with another episode of Waypoint Radio. Until then,
Oh, also we're gonna do at least probably another thing with Nextlander.
yes, we'll probably do the Nintendo thing on Tuesday.
That'll probably be the other thing
That makes
we
the
do.
sense.
Yeah.
That makes the sense. Mm-hmm. And then
The
we'll
most
maybe play some stuff too. Who could
sense.
say? The most sense. Until then, I think we need both of these today. Rob, what do you say? What do you say at the end of a podcast? Now that we're in the spectacle of E3, what ought people not do at the end of a podcast when you host a podcast?
Just wait, let them.
Wait, what?
At the end of a podcast,
What is your
what is your thing?
What is your
What's
thing?
my sign off?
Oh my God.
Oh, that got canceled.